Chapter 1738. Tianyun simply took out a pill and easily exchanged it for the first round's question. Wasn't this too easy? Especially such a simple pill that could be said to be very ordinary. They didn't see what pill it was. Because they were the first to go out, they only knew that Tianyun walked one round outside and picked out a low-grade spirit herb. Such a low-grade spirit herb was able to succeed, which made them exclaim in disbelief. They originally thought that it had to be of a slightly higher grade, or else it would be impossible to succeed. But now it seemed that they had thought too much. Even a low-grade spirit herb could still succeed. As for the spirit herb that Tianyun took out, they didn't take the same one. After all, taking the same one would undoubtedly be equivalent to failure. Previously, Little Medicine Fairy had already said that they couldn't refine the same pill. If they could refine the same pill, then there would be no meaning in setting up this test. Oh, your luck is not bad. You succeeded on your first try. Little Medicine Fairy looked at Tianyun with great interest. She didn't expect someone to succeed on his first try, and it was a perfect success at that. It was a little out of her expectations. Although there was a threshold, this big-mouthed demonic flower couldn't be filled with anything. It really had to match the effects of two attributes to be able to pass. Whoever could see it first would have the priority to pass. As for the later stages, there was a possibility that the model would change. Little Medicine Fairy was really surprised by Tianyun's success on his first try. She thought that Tianyun was really lucky. This performance made the other disciples wail endlessly. The first to succeed would undoubtedly be more eye-catching. This was really the focus of attention, making them go crazy with jealousy. Especially when they saw Little Medicine Fairy's gaze gathered on Tianyun, they couldn't help but want to swallow Tianyun. But they couldn't do that. They could only obediently search for spirit herbs to refine pills. Some saw what kind of spirit herb Tianyun picked and immediately analyzed it to find out what was going on. Because they couldn't communicate with each other and could only silently think about what was going on. Some of them immediately went to look for the corresponding spiritual herbs after thinking about it. As for Tianyun, he couldn't be bothered with them. He took the jade token and walked to the side, standing there in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking. This caused the surrounding disciples to burn with anxiety, and they wished for nothing more than to slap him. What is this kid doing? Shouldn't he hurry up and start the first round of the competition? Exactly, what is he doing? He's just standing there like a fool. What is he doing? Could it be that he's thinking about how to concoct pills? The questions are too difficult. All of them cursed in their hearts. Some of them were harvesting spiritual herbs while paying attention to what was happening. They wanted to take a look at similar questions as a reference. This way, when Tianyun fails or succeeds, he would have a reference point. After all, this was only the first round. Even if Tianyun won first place, he would still be the winner of the first round. There were still many more rounds to go. Generally speaking, there were at least 3 rounds of refining pills, so there was no need to be overly anxious. But now that Tianyun was standing there in a daze, everyone was burning with anxiety. In the end, they couldn't be bothered with Tianyun anymore and went to harvest spiritual herbs. This wasn't something that Tianyun did on purpose. It was written on the token, refining pills will appear in 2 days. Wait here quietly. This made him not know whether to laugh or cry. This kid really didn't play by the rules. He actually made him wait like a fool. He originally thought that he would be the first to finish first, so that he could seize the initiative and obtain a good result. Who knew that he didn't want him to finish first, and instead took his time. As for the other disciples, they all thought that Tianyun was thinking hard about how to complete the questions. While he was waiting, other disciples quickly began to hand over their finished pills. Some failed, some succeeded. Those who succeeded were wild with joy, while those who failed naturally continued to search for other spiritual herbs. Those who observed those who succeeded slightly discovered that there were obvious bright spots. They were all metal attribute and fire attribute spiritual herbs. Hence, they all started to refine. In the end, all of them succeeded. But just as everyone thought that they would definitely succeed, there were suddenly people who failed. Not only did failures appear, but they also failed consecutively. All the effects were useless, making them exclaim in shock. How is this possible? I clearly refined according to their method, and it's not the same type of spiritual herb, but brand new spiritual herbs. This should be in accordance with the rules. That's right, it should definitely be in accordance with the rules. I also refined according to that method, it's impossible for me to fail. All of them felt that it was inconceivable. They were all experienced divine alchemists. How could they possibly make such a mistake? Quiet. Little Medicine Fairy waved her hand and said coldly, if you fail, can't you try other spiritual herbs? Do you think that you can always succeed with this method? Little Medicine Fairy's words made them shiver, and they looked at the big bell in disbelief. Could it be that the requirements for the taste had changed? This was really possible. After succeeding so many times, it was very likely that they changed to another method. It did not need to be a combination of fire and metal attributes, but other tastes. This time, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. They could only bury their heads to search for other spiritual herbs. At least the previous ones were no longer effective. But the most depressed person was still Yi Tianyun. He obtained first place, and after obtaining the question, he stood there in a daze. He realized that the second place who obtained the question quickly went to search for spiritual herbs to refine, including the third place. Only he was standing there in a daze. It was obvious that this was a misdirection. Many people were too concerned about the first place, and did not care about the second place at all. Now, they thought that Yi Tianyun was stupid and did not know how to solve this question. Jiang Kai was exhausted, and the first time was completely based on luck. This little girl really knows how to play. Yi Tianyun held the jade token and looked at Little Medicine Fairy. He was not angry, but he felt that Little Medicine Fairy was very clever, and knew how to play with people's hearts. But from this point, it could be seen that the questions might be different, or even similar. It was just that all eyes were gathered on him, and the other people's attention became less. Over time, everyone slowly returned to their normal rhythm. Little Medicine Fairy also looked at him, and with a charming smile, she lifted her hand and lightly touched the jade token. Soon, a line of words appeared on the jade token in Yi Tianyun's hand, it has been hard on you. Stay here for a while, even if your performance is not good, I will still give you a small reward. Chapter 1739. If they had any complaints, they would immediately calm down after seeing the Little Medicine Fairy's attitude. The Little Medicine Fairy's attitude did not have the dignity of a superior. She would still speak up if something was wrong and propose a compensation condition. This was good. It meant that the Little Medicine Fairy was very friendly. As for what the reward would be, he was looking forward to it. Alright, looks like I can only wait a bit longer. Yi Tianyun did not have any complaints. He just sat there and meditated. How the disciples around him talked about him was their problem. It had nothing to do with him. Under this kind of situation, he, who was originally the focus of attention, became a lucky guy. He was just a guy who was lucky at the start. When faced with the real question, he could not think of a way to deal with it. This caused many disciples to look down on him. They felt that only people like him would try their luck. Casually plucking some spiritual herbs from the outside and refining them into elixirs, and even succeeding, was completely based on luck. When faced with questions that required strength, he would not be able to pass. This caused them to look down on him. No wonder the Little Medicine Fairy wanted to make up for it. She definitely had to make up for it. If it were some of the more strict superiors, they would not care about their psychological feelings. They would do whatever they wanted, and their own decisions were the only ones. As time passed, after 2 days of preparation, most of the disciples had successfully obtained the first question. Some immediately started refining elixirs, while others entered deep meditation. As for those who had not even touched the threshold, they were extremely anxious and kept trying to refine elixirs. However, there were some who failed again and again. They became more and more dispirited and disheartened. However, when they saw that the first person to pass, Yi Tianyun, still had not made a move, they laughed out loud. This foolish brat, he still hasn't made a move. He has already foolishly sat there for 2 days. I wonder if he will sit there for a week. What's the point of passing so early? What a joke. I feel like I'm losing face now. Indeed, it's incomparably embarrassing. I was a little envious before, but how could I be envious now? It's simply embarrassing. All of them laughed, feeling a little better in their hearts. Little did they know that this feeling was just self-consolation. There was no meaning to it. If they knew why Yi Tianyun did not move, they would definitely not be able to laugh. This was all part of the little medicine fairy's plan. As expected, after 2 days, a line of words appeared on the jade pendant in Yi Tianyun's hand: increase the effect of the pill you just refined by 10 times. It was a very easy task to concoct pills. Naturally, it was extremely easy for Yi Tianyun. To other god alchemists, the difficulty was not low. Previously, the pills Yi Tianyun concocted were of a lower grade, but to strengthen it by 10 times, the meaning behind it would be different. At the very least, one would need to be a peak 3rd grade god pill refiner to be able to concoct it. Yi Tianyun's current grade had already risen to the 6th grade when he participated in the alchemy competition. He had spent a large amount of proficiency to level up to that point. He had to have absolute confidence to win this match, so that he could enter the medicine god's temple. If he did not come out on top, not to mention entering the medicine god's temple, he would not even be able to get close to it. The difficulty is really not low. It seems that it is indeed a test of the level of alchemy. If the level of alchemy is too low, naturally you will not be able to pass. Yi Tianyun got up, turned around and walked towards the periphery. His action once again attracted the attention of many cultivators. When they saw him picking the same elixir as before, many cultivators' faces changed, but they did not say anything. They could only shut up obediently. There were 2 ways to increase the effect of an original pill by 10 times. The first way was to crazily stack the pills and successfully fuse them in one go. The second way was to add other spirit herbs with extremely fierce effects to increase the effect of the pill. Yi Tianyun chose the first method. He was too lazy to choose other overbearing elixirs to throw in. He directly used the same elixir to refine. However, this was often the most difficult choice. Even ordinary elixirs were not easy to refine. Yi Tianyun chose the effect of the highest difficulty. He guessed that by doing so, he would definitely get more points. Soon, he collected the elixirs and began to refine. Naturally, he suppressed his own strength. The flames were not the best, they were all relatively ordinary. However, his technique seemed to be very stable, and he quickly quenched the elixir. Under this quenching, a pill was quickly condensed. This pill was much more solid than the previous one, and there was a faint luster on it. Everything was so stable, there was no problem, just like a veteran alchemy, as stable as Mount Tai. This method made many of the audience's eyes light up. Yi Tianyun, who had been disappointing, now attracted their attention again with an amazing method, making them cry out. This alchemy method is amazing. Why didn't he refine such a good method before? That's right, he can succeed in one go. Why does he need to think so much? What's going on? Could it be that he did it on purpose? The surrounding disciples were all discussing. There was clearly such a method, but he was not in a hurry to make a move. They were puzzled. After successfully refining the pill, Yi Tianyun took the pill to the large bell and stuffed it in. Soon, the big-mouthed demonic flower swallowed it. Not long after, the number plate on Yi Tianyun's body was sucked in and quickly spat out. At this time, there was a 10 on it, which meant that he had obtained 10 points, a perfect score. He was not the first to complete the first stage, but he was the first to obtain a perfect score. Immediately, the crowd was in an uproar. They did not know how this evaluation was done. There were clearly people who were faster than him, and of a higher grade, but they could not obtain a perfect score. What was going on? Little Medicine Fairy's beautiful eyes flickered. She looked up and down at Yi Tianyun and smiled. Interesting, it seems that not only is his luck good, but his ability is also good? It's just that this competition is a little disappointing. What disappointed her was not Yi Tianyun, but all of the disciples. She was very disappointed in them. Under the crowd's astonishment, the competition continued. However, it was already too late when they realized what was going on. The reason was very simple. The first stage's topic looked different, but it was actually the same. It was to increase the effect of the previous pill by 10 times. Chapter 1740. As time passed, a week quickly passed. The crystal floating above completely disappeared, signifying the end of the trial. Those who did not complete the trial would be considered failures, while those who succeeded would receive corresponding points. Time's up. At the Little Medicine Fairy's announcement, everyone stopped. Some were happy, some felt that it was okay, while others were dejected and unwilling. After sweeping a glance at their expressions, the Little Medicine Fairy looked at them without the slightest hint of a smile. To tell you the truth, your performances have disappointed me. No matter who you are, you all have disappointed me. The moment these words were said, all the disciples were stunned. Some of them felt that their scores were not bad, so why were they disappointed? Could it be that not getting 10 points would disappoint the Little Medicine Fairy? But that wasn't right. Didn't Yi Tianyun get 10 points? The Little Medicine Fairy was talking about everyone. This included Yi Tianyun, who had obtained 10 points. Actually, other than Yi Tianyun, there were other disciples who had obtained 10 points. Why would the Little Medicine Fairy be disappointed? It seems that you don't know why I'm disappointed. Let me tell you now. The Little Medicine Fairy waved her hand and the large bell flew up. The big-mouthed demonic flower was sitting on the ground, using its feelers to rub its stomach. It seemed to be very full. It had eaten so many elixirs, how could it not feel full? There were so many participants, and each of them had fed it pills. Some of them had even fed it several pills. It must have been stuffed to the point of bursting and needed time to digest them. It's the big-mouthed demonic flower. They exclaimed. They didn't expect that the thing inside the large bell would be the big-mouthed demonic flower. I know, the big-mouthed demonic flower likes metal and fire elixirs. As long as you pair these two well, you will definitely pass. No wonder it needs these two elixirs, so it's the big-mouthed demonic flower inside. After understanding what was going on, all of them finally understood why they had made such a choice, instead of just casually refining the pill. That's right, the judge for you is the big-mouthed demonic flower. Actually, if you want to know how to pass, you should go through the small opening in the large bell and carefully feel the aura inside. As a divine pill master, it won't be too difficult to judge. At most, you just need to spend a bit more time to carefully judge. But none of you did. You relied entirely on luck and luck. Little Medicine Fairy's gaze was sharp as she said to them with a straight face, is this the ability of a divine pill refiner? If you didn't even know the most basic method, then what was the point of refining pills? Some people rely on luck, but could it be that all of you rely on luck and luck? Was it because I saw that you guys were poisoned? Did I also rely on luck? By the time I get it right, all of you will be dead. After learning the truth, the disciples lowered their heads and glared at Yi Tianyun with hatred. If it wasn't for Yi Tianyun leading the way, they would have gone to check it out in detail instead of searching for spiritual herbs to refine pills. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He naturally knew about this method, but he had the appraisal eye, so he could see through it with a glance. Why would he need to go over and check carefully? Wasn't this a waste of time? It didn't matter if others treated him as relying on luck. In any case, it was fine as long as he won. If he really couldn't tell, he would have gone to check instead of guessing. I hope that all of you will reflect on this point. In the later rounds, you must be good at using your own abilities and not rely on luck or luck. Luck may be useful, but I hope to see your strength. Little Medicine Fairy said in a deep voice, "This is the reason why I am not satisfied. There are many points that I am satisfied with, but this is the only point that I am extremely dissatisfied with. This point is over." Next, we will talk about the first person who succeeded. The reason why he didn't move for 2 days was actually because I gave the order. The Jade token stated that the competition would only be revealed after 2 days. That's why he didn't move for 2 days. I will explain it here. As for why he didn't move for 2 days, I believe that all of you already know. The content of the first round, although everyone's actions are different, the content is the same. That is to refine a pill that has 10 times the effect of the previous pill. It doesn't matter if you can't refine a pill that has 10 times the effect. It depends on the situation to determine the points. The limit is the number of points. This is the reason why even though the grade is higher than the previous ones, the points are so low. I designed it this way to prevent any of you from being opportunistic and seeing the content of the first round in advance, then choosing a lower grade pill to refine. I repeat, I do not wish to see too many opportunistic people. I need to see the determination in your hearts, see your own choices, and not blindly stare at others. Little Medicine Fairy spat out a series of words, causing them to become completely clear-headed. Only now did they know why Tianyun was standing there in a daze. If they knew that the content of the first round was to increase the effect of a pill by 10 times, then everyone would have refined ordinary pills. Thus, those who did not know dug a hole for themselves. In order to show off in front of Little Medicine Fairy, they specially refined a good grade pill. When they found out about the content of the first round, none of them could laugh anymore. It was simply a huge hole. At this moment, the surrounding audience started to discuss. Knowing that Tianyun was only part of the plan, they felt extremely helpless. It seemed like they had all thought wrongly before, thinking that Tianyun did not have the ability and relied on luck. However, there was a bit of luck involved. He just happened to obtain an ordinary pill and successfully passed. As the effect increased by 10 times, the difficulty did not increase by much. After knowing about it, some of them really had to suffer in silence, unable to voice out their bitterness. If they really set out the question, then they would be eliminated. We were wrong, we will properly reflect on ourselves. That's right, Princess Little Medicine Fairy, we will properly reflect on ourselves in the next round, we will not be opportunistic. Believe us, we will strive to obtain a higher score in the next round. All of them seemed to have been injected with chicken blood, not wanting to disappoint Little Medicine Fairy. After all, they still had a chance. Alright, I will believe you all. I hope that in the next round, you will really work hard. Don't try to show off in front of me. To me, the best performance is not in the process, but in the results. Get into the top 10, or even the top 5, that is a true performance, only then will you be worthy of my admiration. Little Medicine Fairy said sternly. Her words of encouragement were really very effective. All of the hot-blooded youths started to shout loudly, wanting to repent. Tianyun shook his head. He was really used as a tool, but he had to admit that Little Medicine Fairy's ability was not bad. With just a little bit of planning, everything was within her grasp. Chapter 1741. Tianyun was very appreciative of Little Medicine Fairy's meticulous plan. She must have already considered the possible outcome, so she immediately arranged the corresponding plan. Whether it was Tianyun or whoever won first place, they would have to wait here obediently. However, this first place was a little beyond the Little Medicine Fairy's expectation. She really didn't expect that someone would finish so quickly and rely on luck. It was really a little beyond her expectations. It was really too fast. Fortunately, everything was according to her plan, and nothing unexpected happened. Next, let's look at the scores. The overall score is not bad. There are more than 10 people who got the full score of 10. This is a good result. As for the others who got 9 points, there are also many of them. I am satisfied with the results. First it was the blame, then it was the praise. She pointed out the mistakes and praised the right ones. I hope you can get better results in the next round. After all, this is just the beginning. If you are too arrogant now, you may lose in the later rounds. The little medicine fairy smiled slightly. Now take a break. After a few hours, the second round of the competition will continue. After the announcement, all the disciples breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, they didn't continue to blame them. What the little medicine fairy had said earlier had truly made them feel ashamed. They wished that they could dig a hole and bury themselves in it. After this episode, the eyes of many disciples and the audience once again focused on Yi Tianyun. Previously, they mistakenly thought that Yi Tianyun would not be selected, but now it seemed that they were wrong. There was no doubt that Yi Tianyun would become a big competitor and might even get a very good ranking. Especially the alchemy technique. They were all divine alchemists, so they all knew it. Such a stable alchemy technique made them look at Yi Tianyun in a new light. As a fellow contestant, they were full of hostility towards him, but as an audience disciple, they were somewhat looking forward to Yi Tianyun's performance. Every alchemy competition, they hoped that there would be a few geniuses so that the medicine temple could become more and more prosperous. There was competition, but it was better to focus on fair competition instead of using underhanded methods. In the blink of an eye, a few hours of rest had passed. The second round was about to begin. Everyone stared at the little medicine fairy as if they were facing a great enemy. Hopefully, the little fairy medicine would not come up with any more strange questions. The first trial had already eliminated many disciples. Fortunately, it was only a small portion, which proved that her overall strength was not bad. Especially the sudden change of taste in the later stages, this was really a scam. The change was quite big. Originally, it liked the metal and fire attributes, but in an instant, it changed to the wood and water attributes. These two different attributes had to be refined again. Although he could refine it with a little more time, he still needed to spend a little more time. This was especially true for those who concocted higher-grade elixirs. They would be shooting themselves in the foot. Some concocted high-grade pills, and the effects would be increased by 10 times, depending on their own abilities. Some could only concoct pills with 2 or 3 times the effects, and they could only get 2 or 3 points, which was really a huge loss. This was the result of wanting to save face. It was all for the sake of winning a beauty's smile, but the one who would lose face would be himself. You don't have to worry so much. I only set up a threshold for the first stage. It won't be like this for the second stage. It will be relatively more straightforward. Seeing their nervous expressions, the little fairy medicine couldn't help but smile. The content of the second stage is very simple. Of course, you have to take the items first. Shortly after, the little fairy medicine flicked her hand, and another large bell fell. With a dong, it heavily smashed onto the ground, causing many of the participants to tremble. It was this large bell again, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. This was the same large bell from before, and now they were seeing it again. How could they not be worried? They said they wouldn't mess around, but now they were messing around again. Don't worry, there is no big-mouthed demonic flower inside. What you need to do now is to take the items inside according to your number. It's that simple. The little fairy medicine said with a beaming smile. They all looked at each other in dismay, but they could only brace themselves and go up. Very quickly, according to the number, they all went up and took out a small bottle of elixirs, but they didn't know what was inside. Every participant took out a small bottle of elixirs. There were no words on them, so no one knew what was inside. However, no one opened it. After all, the little fairy medicine didn't say that they could open it, so it was best not to open it. After everyone had taken out a bottle, the little fairy medicine nodded. It seems that everyone has obtained the corresponding bottle. In fact, there is a poison pill inside, and every poison pill has a different poison. This round of the competition is very simple. All you need to do is to consume this poison pill and then slowly sense what kind of poison you've been afflicted with. Once you know what poison it is, you can go find the antidote and refine it yourself. You will also have 1 week. Of course, the prerequisite is that you can endure for a week. This poison pill will become more powerful as time passes. If you pass out, that means you're out of the competition. You have to hurry up. The little fairy medicine explained with a beaming smile. Just what was this? Everyone's expression changed. They had never seen such a question before. The little fairy medicine said she wouldn't trick them, but in the blink of an eye, she ruthlessly tricked them. This question was not just a trap, it was a giant trap. Not only did they have to test the poison inside, they also had to pick the spirit herbs to refine. During the refining process, they would also be disturbed by the poison. This meant that there was a possibility of failure. Refining pills required one to be completely focused and in a stable state. Only then would it be easy to succeed. If they could only find the antidote at the very end, even if they were refining pills, their hands would tremble. At that time, the chances of failure would increase substantially. As the number of failures increased, they would be more and more poisoned. It was simply a trap. When Yi Tianyun heard this question, he immediately felt embarrassed. Will I be poisoned if I take this pill? Yi Tianyun looked at the pill bottle in his hand. He didn't know what poison was inside, but with his strong physique, he didn't dare to say that he was immune to poison, but at least low-grade poisons had no effect on him. Chapter 1742. Yi Tianyun had a strange expression, but he did not show it. He could only pretend to be poisoned. Otherwise, if he ate it and told the little medicine fairy that the poison had no effect on him, she would definitely check his body. If she did, the result would be that his cultivation would be exposed. The void bloodline could perfectly conceal his cultivation, but it was only limited to probing and not close contact. Close contact would definitely expose them. There was no doubt about that. Thus, he could only pretend to be poisoned and pick the spirit herbs so that his actions could be seen. When the time came, he would explain the situation to the little medicine fairy and there would naturally be no problem. That's the general content of the question. The earlier you solve it, the higher your score will be. The full score is 30 points. Those who were at the bottom before and thought that their strength was not limited to this, now is the time for you to make a comeback. The little medicine fairy flicked her finger and the crystal began to melt. It was no different from before, quickly dissolving. In the beginning, each of them quickly opened the medicine bottles and carefully smelled the smell of the poisonous pills to identify the corresponding toxicity within. Being able to identify one was one. As for the rest, they would have to rely on themselves to sense it. This required one's knowledge of poison to see how much they knew. The more they knew, the more they would be able to tell which poison was causing the reaction. Then, they would be able to use the right medicine to cure it. Yi Tianyun immediately identified the poison with the appraisal eye, what kind of toxicity it contains, what kind of ingredients it contains, everything appeared in front of him one by one. So that's how it is. It's not hard to cure it, and the difficulty is quite suitable. Yi Tianyun nodded. He did not know what the other participants' poison pills were like, but the difficulty should be the same. That way, it would be a fair competition. Correspondingly, with their cultivation, it would be very difficult to cure the poison with their own power. Even if they could, it would take more than a week. Just as he was about to pretend to be poisoned, someone in front of him suddenly stood up and came to the little medicine fairy. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, this disciple has successfully cured the poison. This disciple's body is immune to poison, so after consuming this poison pill, I immediately detoxified myself. Is this a success? Yi Tianyun looked up. This disciple really did have a special body, but it was acquired through self-cultivation. It was obvious that he usually took all kinds of poisonous pills and detoxified himself. He also absorbed a portion of the poison, allowing his body to form a certain amount of antibodies. Unless it was a very strong poison, it wouldn't have any effect on him. In theory, this can be counted as your own ability and can be counted as points. However, it cannot be counted as full points, only half points. The little medicine fairy looked at him and smiled faintly. Then are you willing to take 15 points now? If you don't want it, I can give you a poison pill that you can't detoxify right now and let you dispel it. This, the disciple who came up was stunned. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to get full marks. If he could only get half of the points, then it would be meaningless. Then I'm willing to take a brand new poisonous pill. The disciple gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice. He didn't want to get 15 points. Not bad, you have ambition. The little medicine fairy smiled and flicked her hand. A bottle of poisonous pills landed in the disciple's hand, indicating that he could begin. This was just the beginning, and he had already passed. Moreover, he had obtained a high score by relying on his own detoxification. This caused an uproar among the crowd. They didn't expect that it could be played like this. Even if it wasn't full marks, at least there was another method. I almost forgot to add some rules. If you think that you have the ability to detoxify, it is allowed. Whether you use your own ability to detoxify or rely on refining pills, it is considered your own ability. If you only use your own ability to detoxify, the highest score you can get is 15 points. What I want to test now is your ability to dispel the detoxification pill, not your own abilities. Firstly, on the battlefield or in a dangerous situation, you might not be poisoned, but that doesn't mean that your companions won't be poisoned. Furthermore, unless you are absolutely immune to poison, you won't be able to get full marks. After all, the poison pills I provide are only average. A truly serious poison pill can turn you into a pool of blood in a second. This is why I don't give full marks. Your own ability is important, but this is a pill refining competition, not a resistance competition. The little medicine fairy's explanation made everyone feel that it was very reasonable. This was indeed true. Even if one was immune to poison, the same could not be said for their companions. Or perhaps there were many poisons in the world, and they could resist a portion of them. What about the higher grade ones? However, the little medicine fairy was rather open-minded to give 15 points. No matter what, this was considered his own ability, so he specially added the corresponding rules. As expected, the contestant who relied on his own ability to detoxify immediately had his forehead covered with cold sweat after consuming the poison pill. Just based on his previous ability, he couldn't easily detoxify. When Tianyun saw this scene, he was glad that he didn't play like this. Even if he didn't need to check anything, a score of 15 points was really too low. Looks like I have to put on an act for a while. Tianyun smiled as he consumed the poison pill. Then, he sat down to meditate and squeezed out a few drops of cold sweat. It looked like he was poisoned. He had to act properly. If he was seen through, it would be really awkward. He didn't ask for full marks, but his score couldn't be too low. Thus, he decided to endure for half a day. From his point of view, anyone who could successfully detoxify within a day would have a chance of getting full marks. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, this disciple has successfully detoxified. At this time, someone succeeded in refining the pill. After consuming the pill, there were no more problems. He came forward to let the Little Medicine Fairy judge his score. The Little Medicine Fairy didn't rush to answer. Instead, she coldly looked at him. You can be eliminated. From now on, be an honest little medicine boy. You are forbidden from participating in the pill refining competition 3 times. What? The contestant was dumbfounded. He didn't expect this result. The other spectators were also shocked. How could this be the result? Princess Little Medicine Fairy, why is this happening? I clearly succeeded in detoxifying. The contestant hurriedly came over to ask. Chapter 1743. Little Medicine Fairy's words caused the participant to take several steps back. His face turned pale and his mouth moved, but he did not say a word of rebuttal. After the spectators heard about it, there was an uproar. They did not expect him to be such a shameless person. They absolutely believed Little Medicine Fairy's words and believed that she would not lie or frame a participant. There was no meaning in this. Just Little Medicine Fairy's status was below the medicine gods, so she would not lie. I've seen everything you've done. I know exactly what kind of poisonous pills you've taken. I know exactly what kind of detoxification pill you used. If you want to bluff your way through, let's see if you can do it. If you can do it, I will give you full marks. If you can do it, you will be banned from the competition. Little Medicine Fairy's voice was cold. You really disappoint me. I do not wish to see something like this happen again. Little Medicine Fairy angrily waved her hand and that participant was sent flying. He vomited blood and flew out of the arena, heavily injured. From this, it could be seen how angry Little Medicine Fairy was. It was already good that she did not want his life. Playing tricks in front of her was an affront to her dignity. Many participants looked at each other. A few of them really wanted to do the same thing as the previous participant. This poison pill could really be blocked by some of them, but they wanted to obtain high marks, so they wanted to bluff their way through. The result of bluffing was Little Medicine Fairy's rage. Once she was enraged, it was very scary. He was merciless when he started to crush them. The key was that from now on, he would really be a little medicine boy, quietly planting spirit herbs in a corner. After all, he had lost all his face. How could he dare to continue walking around here? He had even been banned from participating in the alchemy competition, which could allow him to soar through the ranks. Little Medicine Fairy was giving him a chance. She only banned him from participating a few times, not permanently. A permanent ban was equivalent to being banished to the cold palace, never to rise again. This group of idiots, do they really think Little Medicine Fairy can't see it? Tianyun shook his head. Although he wanted to pretend, he definitely had to follow the correct method to pick the spirit herbs and then refine them into detoxification pills. As a powerful celestial god, Little Medicine Fairy could observe every minute action. Therefore, she knew exactly what kind of antidote they were concocting. If they wanted to cause trouble under her watch, they would be courting death. Their cultivation bases were only at the Lord of Heaven. A mere Lord of Heaven dared to play tricks in front of the gods. Did he have a death wish? However, they were naive enough to think that they would not be discovered. Reality was a slap to their faces, and it was a heavy slap to their faces. Their faces were slapped swollen, letting them know that it was useless to play petty tricks. Half a day later, Tianyun got up and went to search for spirit herbs. He very accurately found the corresponding spirit herbs and took them back to refine them into a detoxification pill. After taking a moment to regulate his breathing, he stood up and said, "Princess Little Medicine Fairy, this disciple has successfully detoxified the poison." Tianyun wasn't the first person to successfully detoxify the poison, but he was definitely one of the best. He didn't want to be the first, as long as he could get the first place, it was enough. Little Medicine Fairy nodded her head and said with a satisfied smile, "Not bad, not bad, the combination was perfect. You pass, you have obtained the full score of 30 points. Tianyun once again got a full score of 30 points, which made many of the contestants feel the pressure doubled. They didn't expect that in the first level he relied on luck, but in this level he showed his own strength, easily refining detoxification pill, which shocked them again. The spectators at the side sighed, feeling that Tianyun was truly capable. He wasn't just strong in the first round, but weak in the second round. In an instant, the surrounding competitors became even more hostile towards him. Tianyun didn't have the slightest bit of hostility towards them. After all, he wasn't on the same level as these competitors. Treating them as opponents? That would be thinking too highly of them. From the start to the end, Tianyun didn't treat them as opponents. Treating them as opponents was too degrading. No matter what, his opponents had to be at least tier 6 or 7 god pill masters. Facing anyone below this level was really meaningless. Even if he won, he would still be bullying the weak. Yi Tianyun's score easily shot up to the top, reaching the top 10. He could be considered as a nameless kid, but he managed to reach the top. At this moment, many of the spectators started to discuss about Yi Tianyun. They didn't know where Yi Tianyun came from. According to this standard, no matter what, he shouldn't be a nobody. For example, the other top rankers were all famous geniuses, so it wasn't surprising for them to be at the top. However, Yi Tianyun was like a dark horse, ruthlessly killing his way out, shocking them all. With regards to these discussions, Yi Tianyun wasn't interested. No matter what they said, he pretended not to hear them. Like an old monk in meditation, he sat on the same spot, waiting for the next round. Some felt that Yi Tianyun's actions were unreasonable. Some felt that Yi Tianyun was too pretentious. He was clearly quite capable, but he chose this moment to explode. Everyone had their own thoughts. Little Medicine Fairy was very satisfied with Yi Tianyun's situation. Not arrogant, not arrogant. This was the attitude he should have. As a God Pill Master, one's attitude was very important. For people like Yi Tianyun, it was especially important. As time passed, the first 2 rounds of the competition ended just like that. Some people were eliminated, while others advanced. Finally, there was a huge decrease in the number of people who successfully entered the 3rd round. Originally, there were thousands of participants, but now, there were only 500 to 600 left. This was a decrease of almost half of the original number. Most importantly, many of them had low scores. It seemed like the Little Medicine Fairy's questions were really ruthless. The elimination was much more ruthless than the previous rounds. In the past, they felt that the difficulty of the previous rounds was too high. Now, it seemed like the previous rounds were too easy. Not bad, there were many participants in the 2nd round who displayed good abilities. Although there were a few who violated the rules, overall, it allowed me to see the promise you mentioned in the 1st round. All of your abilities are not bad. All of you have worked hard. The 2nd round didn't stump you. Little Medicine Fairy nodded her head in satisfaction. It was obvious that her mood was much better. Next, we will rest for 2 days. After that, we will proceed to the 3rd round. After Little Medicine Fairy announced this, she signaled for them to rest. This rest could be done by going to other regions or resting on the same spot. While they were resting, the surrounding participants directly surged forward and surrounded Yi Tianyun. Chapter 1744. Brother, you don't look familiar. Which region are you from? Yeah, let's get to know each other. I've never seen you before. You're pretty good. You're really amazing. I've never seen you before. My name is Xia Yun. Brother, can I get to know you? One by one, some of them came to see Yi Tianyun, and some of them came to see Yi Tianyun. They all saw some potential in Yi Tianyun and came over to get to know him. In fact, it wasn't just Yi Tianyun. The other disciples with higher rankings all had their fellow disciples come over to congratulate them. Some of them were even generous with their praises. This was human nature. As long as one had strength, there would be a group of people coming over. Some of them might not necessarily want to curry favor with you, but they would definitely want to get to know you. Having a few strong friends was always a good thing. This was a 2-day break. The Little Medicine Fairy wasn't forbidden from moving around. She could return to her residence or go to another place to rest for a period of time. After all, some of the participants had consumed quite a lot of energy after consuming the poison pill. Although the Little Medicine Fairy had controlled the poison pill very well, there were still some places that were injured. Thus, she still gave them a bit more time to rest. As for whether they wanted to rest or celebrate passing the 2nd round, it was up to them. The Little Medicine Fairy didn't care about this. After she made the announcement, she flew away to busy herself with her own matters. She would only come back after 2 days to continue the alchemy competition. I'm sorry, I've consumed quite a lot of energy. I need some quiet rest. Yi Tianyun ignored them and directly sat down to meditate, waiting for the next round of the competition. He had come here to steal some information, not to make friends. There was no point in doing so. His cold rejection made the expressions of the disciples who came over to congratulate or befriend turn ugly. It seemed like they had been snubbed after showing their warm faces. They had come over for nothing, only to be rejected. All of them snorted and turned to leave, no longer paying attention to Yi Tianyun. No wonder he's so obscure. He's a loner. Boring. It's better to stay away from this kind of person. Otherwise, he won't even bother replying to you. They all knew Yi Tianyun's character, so they were too lazy to bother with him. There were many people who were better than Yi Tianyun. It was better to bother with those who were better or slightly worse than him. After all, at least they would still pay attention to him. When it was quiet again, Little Medicine Fairy had returned to the Medicine God Temple. Xian, it seems like the difficulty of your test this time is quite high. A handsome middle-aged man smiled kindly as he looked at the Little Medicine Fairy, who was flying up from below. It's only interesting if it's more difficult. Only then can we filter out more outstanding disciples. In the past, I have been watching from the side and felt that this design was not reasonable at all. Now, it is finally my turn to design it. This is the best choice. Little Medicine Fairy smiled slightly, feeling very satisfied with what she had done. It's good that there are some changes. The content of the test has always been the same. It's time to change it. This middle-aged man was naturally the alchemy god. He looked like an extremely amiable middle-aged man, without the slightest bit of majesty. Everything about him seemed so amiable, but the energy fluctuations he emitted were the same as the Little Medicine Fairies. They both had the body of an alchemy god. Beside him, there was a group of spirit medicines, all of which were at the level of tens of thousands of years. In the divine realm, these spirit medicines would be snatched by the major forces, but now they were staying on the side, doing their own activities and treating this place as their own home. It's definitely going to change, but Father, is it really right to always be like this? The Little Medicine Fairy looked at her father doubtfully, hoping that her father could give her an answer. Xian, you're here again. The medicine god's originally peaceful expression suddenly sank, replaced by a serious face. It's not that Xian is repeating these words, but it's time for the sacred medicine hall to change. Each disciple is extremely arrogant and needs to go out and gain experience. Moreover, the evil spirit race is doing evil outside and many forces have been annexed. If this continues, if the evil spirit race occupies the outside divine realm, we will also be finished. The Little Medicine Fairy did not flinch, but with a firm and powerful tone, fiercely fought back. Enough. The medicine god slapped the chair, startling the 10,000 years old spirit medicines on the side. They jumped a few times to the side. I have already said this, the outside world has nothing to do with us. From the beginning, our sacred medicine hall has been an absolutely neutral existence. No matter what happens outside, it has nothing to do with us. Even if it really comes to this extent, we will be destroyed, so be it. Is this the so-called ancestral teaching? Because of this ancestral teaching, we did not participate in the first battle of the Divine Emperor, and the outside world has scolded us countless times. They said that we are cowards and allowed foreign enemies to invade. Now the second battle of the Divine Emperor is also about to begin, and the evil Emperor is ready to make a move. Are we going to follow the so-called ancestral teaching and continue to be cowardly until we die? I think that the original ancestral teaching was just that we do not want to interfere with the order of this world, not that we do not want to resist any foreign enemies. The Little Medicine Fairy glared at her father with red eyes, wanting to continue to fight something. Pa! A clear and melodious sound rang out. The Little Medicine Fairy's face was twisted to the side, and a palm print appeared on it. The burning pain made her clench her teeth, but she did not cry out, nor did she cover her face. Instead, she turned her head to look at her father again. Ancestor, please do not blame Xian. Everything she said is nonsense, and her mentality is not right. The medicine god stood up and made a praying gesture, as if the ancestor could still hear her. Father, what are you doing? The ancestor has already left for God knows how long, how can he still hear you? The little medicine fairy did not give up, still roaring angrily, and her voice spread throughout the entire temple. Impudent! If the ancestor's words are really passed down, what do you think? The medicine god looked at the little medicine fairy with an exasperated expression and said, with your qualifications, you cannot hear the ancestor's voice for the time being, but we can. Now you know why we did not choose to move out. The ancestor has always been here, as long as we pass on his voice, he will respond. Even if the evil spirit race really occupies everything, as long as they dare to touch our sacred medicine hall, only death awaits them. Can they be stronger than our ancestor? Impossible. Chapter 1745. The little medicine fairy was stunned. She never thought that she would really be able to contact her ancestor. She had never heard of such news and thought that it had been completely severed. Now that she realized that she could still contact the legendary ancestor, it was completely different. Father, are you saying that we can hear the ancestor's instructions through prayer? The little medicine fairy still couldn't believe it. Everything was too unbelievable. Their ancestor had disappeared for so long, yet he could still contact him. Yes, this is something that only people of our level can know. Xian, since you are so stubborn, I can only say it out loud. The fewer people who know about this, the better. The medicine god shook his head and said, through prayer, we can receive the information passed down by our ancestor. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. For example, when it comes to the battle of the god emperor, the ancestor passed down a message saying that we should maintain absolute neutrality and absolutely not make a move. At first, we didn't believe it, but there was indeed a divine decree that was passed down from the ancestor's statue, allowing us to clearly understand. The little medicine fairy was stunned and said with great difficulty, that's why we didn't make a move at the beginning of the battle of the god emperor? Yes, that's why we didn't make a move and remain neutral. We don't know why we have to remain neutral, but we have to obey the ancestor's instructions. The medicine god shook his head. They didn't make a move because of the ancestor's divine decree. The outside world didn't know about it, but even if they knew, wasn't this ancestor being too selfish? No one could figure out why they had always been neutral. So that's how it is. Even though the little medicine fairy knew the truth, she still felt very disappointed. She really couldn't understand why they had to do this. The evil spirit race was so evil, even if they had the ability to protect themselves, she would still feel incomparably angry as she watched the forces outside be destroyed. Perhaps she was not related to the outside world, but the evil spirit race made her feel disgusted. Especially after knowing the actions of the evil spirit race, she felt even more disgusted and wished that she could exterminate the evil spirit race. It's fine as long as you know, so don't speak nonsense. Let the outside world say whatever they want. Father is tired, withdraw and focus on the alchemy competition. This is related to the selection of the new disciples of the medicine god hall, the ancestor is probably watching. The medicine god waved his hand, indicating for the little medicine fairy to leave. When the little medicine fairy left, she was in a daze and had yet to recover from the shock. No wonder the medicine god was so agitated and gave her a ruthless slap. He was truly afraid of blaspheming his ancestors. If the ancestor was still alive, he would still descend. If the little medicine immortal blasphemed the ancestor, she would be annihilated with a snap of her finger. That was an existence of a god emperor. Can the ancestor's statue that we worship every year really show its spirit? Little medicine fairy muttered. The red mark on her face had already disappeared, but her heart was filled with reverence. But even though she was in awe, she still couldn't understand why they chose to be neutral. He could have been neutral in the past, so why was he neutral now? Her mind was a mess, and by the time she came back to her senses, she was already standing on the alchemy stage, completely unaware of what had happened. That's strange. Why is there something wrong with her today? When Yi Tianyun saw the little medicine fairy, he felt that something was wrong with her. Her mood was much worse than before. He wasn't the only one who noticed it. The others also noticed it, but they didn't know how to go up and say it. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, Princess Little Medicine Fairy. Someone shouted from the side, but the little medicine fairy didn't respond. After shouting a few more times, she finally responded. When the little medicine fairy came back to her senses, she smiled awkwardly and said, "Sorry, I was just thinking about something. Now that time is almost up, let's prepare to start the competition." She quickly adjusted her mood, but Yi Tianyun could still see that the little medicine fairy's brows were still filled with melancholy. He didn't know what she was thinking about. Even if the others could see it, they wouldn't dare to ask. This was the little medicine fairy's private matter, so how could they dare to casually ask? Especially those high and mighty people. With such a great disparity in status, it wasn't easy to ask. If they really wanted to ask, only those at the elder level would be shameless enough to ask. The rest could only stand to the side. After all, even if they asked, would the little medicine fairy tell them? Soon, everyone was ready. They were a little nervous, hoping that this time it wouldn't be too much of a trap. It looks like you're all ready. The third stage is about to begin. The little medicine fairy smiled faintly and immediately adjusted her mood. She looked much better than before. Shortly after, she waved her hand and another large bell fell down, smashing heavily on their chests. They clutched their chests, feeling so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. Looking at this large bell, they felt their scalps go numb. They didn't think that this large bell would appear again and again. How could they not feel their scalps go numb and their heads ache? This large bell again. They were extremely depressed and some couldn't help but say it out loud. It seemed like they had a deep grudge against this large bell. After all, it had always been this large bell that the questions were obtained from inside. Would they be able to obtain the questions from inside this time? There's no need to be nervous. This large bell is just like what you think, the questions will still come from inside. The little medicine fairy's words made them feel despair. They originally thought that the questions would not come from inside this bell, but it seemed like they were too naive. The questions would still come from inside this large bell. Even though the topic might not be a bad one, the shadow of the bell still lingered in his mind. Don't worry, the questions will definitely be very difficult. If the questions weren't difficult, would it still be called an alchemy competition? The little medicine fairy gave them another ruthless blow. They originally thought that she would say that it wasn't difficult, but who would have thought that she would actually say that it was difficult? These words were crude, but the logic was not. If the alchemy competition was easy, would it still be called an alchemy competition? They might as well just rank the participants according to their usual standards. There was no need to do anything else. Alright, don't be too depressed. I'm sure you'll like the questions this time. The little medicine fairy clapped her hands and smiled. Now, you can pick your questions. It's the same as the second stage, pick your own. Come forward according to your number. One by one, the participants could only go forward to pick their questions. What they took out was still a bottle of pills. There was nothing new. Another pill? They thought that it would be a jade token or something that would display the questions. They didn't expect that it would still be pills. Could it be that it would be the same as before and they would have to consume the pills inside? But the detoxification process had already ended. What other types of pills would there be? The other types were either beneficial or restorative. There didn't seem to be any questions for this one, right? Chapter 1746. The content of the third test is in the bottle in your hands. You can open it now and see what exactly is inside. The little medicine fairy was very generous this time. She gestured for them to open the bottle and see what was inside. One by one, they immediately opened the bottle. When they saw what was inside, they all let out cries of surprise. However, they did not say what it was. The bottle in Yi Tianyun's hand did indeed contain an elixir. However, it was only half a elixir. The remaining half was nowhere to be found. This meant that it was not a complete elixir. In terms of refining level, it was also not a complete elixir. It could be considered a semi-finished product. There were a total of 3 similar half-finished elixirs. They were all similar semi-finished elixirs. A semi-finished elixir was placed in a bottle. This was a little thought-provoking. The elixirs in your hands are all semi-finished. I believe you can all see this. The third test is very simple. You have to rack your brains to find the best effect for this semi-finished elixir. In other words, you have to refine it again. Using this semi-finished elixir as a foundation, you have to refine the best effect. This will test your usual experience and alchemy skills. The higher the grade of the elixir you refine, the higher the score. At the same time, the more complex it is, the more points you will get. After the little medicine fairy explained, everyone understood what was going on. This was basically a test of whose idea was better. Under the perfect combination, one could refine a better grade elixir. This was just like a weapon. Given a fixed material, then paired it with dragon blood, phoenix blood, spirit medicine, crystal stones, and so on, to maximize the effect of the weapon. This semi-finished elixir was the same. It depended on how the ingredients were matched. However, it definitely could not be randomly matched. Originally, if the elixir was randomly matched, not only would the effect be very poor, the slightest mistake could lead to failure. Eating it could even lead to death. For this reason, the foundation was very important. Without a good foundation, one would not be able to refine a better grade elixir. In particular, a large amount of matching was very important. If one did not have any brains, they would not be able to think of what to match in order to maximize the effect of this semi-finished elixir. The little medicine fairy's test was indeed able to accurately grasp the corresponding points and choose the more outstanding disciples. So that's how it is. This is really interesting. Yi Tianyun touched his chin and looked at the semi-finished product in his hand. The content is quite interesting, but for him, the difficulty is really not that high. He felt that little medicine fairy's idea was quite interesting. Coming to the god domain of the 3 realms to nurture alchemists was a pretty good choice. If this idea were to spread, it would really scare people to death. The one who was frightened was the Region Lord of the Alliance. Was it even possible to kidnap his precious daughter? There are 3 semi-finished pills in the bottle, which means that you have 3 chances. If you fail, you will be eliminated. The better the effect, the higher the score. The full score is still 30 points, and the time limit is still 1 week. Begin. With a flick of little medicine fairy's finger, the time crystal flew up again and rapidly melted in the air. This time, the contestants did not act immediately. Instead, they were thinking hard. This was not a simple matter, especially since there was a limit to the number of times he could do it. If he failed, he would be eliminated. The full score in the previous 2 rounds was useless. If he was eliminated in this round, he would not have any more chances. This was such a cruel situation. They absolutely could not miss a single round. They had to pass every round. It was a little strict, but if they wanted outstanding disciples, they had to do this. After all, they did not allow any flaws to appear. This was all basic knowledge and related to their own foundation. If they did not meet this requirement, they did not have the qualifications to climb up. While everyone was thinking hard, Yi Tianyun turned around and walked towards the spiritual herbs, instantly becoming everyone's focus. Who would have thought that the first person to complete the test would go to pick spiritual herbs again? Wasn't this speed a little too fast? Is he bluffing to attract Princess Little Medicine Fairy's attention? 3 chances. If he messes around and loses them all, that would be a joke. I don't believe that he can succeed in one go and choose the best. Princess Little Medicine Fairy clearly said that she does not want to see any self-expression. She just wants to see the best result. This time, there will be a good show to watch. This kid has long disliked him. He doesn't even bother talking to him. I hope he can make a fool of himself. Many of the contestants were criticizing him in their hearts. They were very unhappy with Yi Tianyun's actions. Yi Tianyun's actions had indeed attracted Little Medicine Fairy's attention. She kept staring at him as he went to pick the spiritual herbs. His pill is the jade magnolia and the deep night grass. If he wants to achieve a perfect combination, he needs to pick 4 types of spirit herbs to achieve the best effect. I've started picking, the first one is right, the second one is right. He's really quick to think, he's already perfectly matched 2 types, the third one is also right. This disciple is really good at concealing his abilities. It seems that the 4th one should not be a problem. The 4th one is the ding shu grass. It's not suitable, it's completely messed up. If he matches it like this, the effect will only be worse. Little Medicine Fairy shook her head, unable to conceal the disappointment in her eyes. She did not expect that after getting 3 correct, the 4th one would be wrong. This made her somewhat disappointed. Forget it, there are a total of 3 chances. In a while, he will know that the effect is not optimal. I hope he can find the problem. If he hands it in, the score will definitely not be high. Little Medicine Fairy had given them 3 chances. As long as they could refine the best elixir in any one of them, they would be able to obtain a high score. She would not say that there would be extra points for the first success. She would only look at the best result. After Yi Tianyun picked the spiritual herbs, he began to refine the elixir. Because the overall grade was not high, he only spent half a day to successfully refine it. This was naturally the effect that Yi Tianyun had deliberately concealed. If he really used all his power, he would be able to complete it in an instant. At that time, it would give everyone a big fright. It's done. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, please judge. Yi Tianyun handed over the refined elixir. The surrounding audience and participants all looked over, wanting to see how many points Yi Tianyun's elixir could obtain. Little Medicine Fairy shook her head, looked at him and said, "Are you sure you want to compete with this elixir? Although there are 3 chances, once you hand it in, the score will be determined. Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes, I am sure. After all, this is the best combination available," Yi Tianyun said with absolute certainty. Chapter 1747. Since you have chosen to hand over this one, then hand it over. The Little Medicine Fairy did not take it over, but said in a clear voice, "This pill was perfectly matched in the beginning. 3 of the most perfect spirit herbs were chosen, but the last one was chosen wrongly. This caused the effect to not be fully displayed, and the effect might even be weakened. Therefore, after consideration, I can only give you 10 points for this pill. This is the score I will give you. I hope that in the next match, you will be more attentive, think more about the effect, or try more." The Little Medicine Fairy's words also revealed that there was still the next match. But everyone's attention was still on Yi Tianyun's score, 10 points. 30 points out of 10 points, but he could only get 10 points. Because he chose the last one wrongly, it caused the overall effect to decrease, and his score fell by a large amount. If he did not make a particularly wrong choice, he would have gotten at least 20 points. Now he only had 10 points, a very miserable score. Although he passed, compared to his previous performance, it was really too horrible to look at. This kid really failed. He went to find spirit herbs without thinking, now he finally failed. This is the consequence of being arrogant. He still wanted to show off, but how can he do so now? He really made a fool of himself. He really is an idiot. Not only is he unreasonable, he doesn't know how to grasp opportunities, and is honest all the way to the end. What a joke. All of them mocked him, but they kept it in their hearts, not daring to casually mock him. At that time, the Little Medicine Fairy would definitely punish them. They did not say anything, but their eyes were full of mockery, all of them poking Yi Tianyun's back like needles. 10 points. Yi Tianyun squinted at the Little Medicine Fairy, and repeated this score. Yes, 10 points. You matched the first 3 perfectly, But only the last one was wrong, so I hope you can work harder. The little medicine fairy patiently explained. She did not want Yi Tianyun to walk down the wrong path. You are saying that the dingshu grass is wrong? Yi Tianyun said with a faint smile. That's right, the dingshu grass is a wrong combination. Because of the dingshu grass's effect, it caused the overall effect to decrease. If you were to pair it with something else, you would be able to obtain a high score, but now you can only obtain a very low score. Little medicine fairy explained. Oh, I don't think the dingshu grass is wrong. On the contrary, I think the dingshu grass is the most perfect combination. Yi Tianyun retorted, not agreeing with the little medicine fairy's judgment. Impossible. The effects of dingshu grass are negative, especially when combined with those 3 types of spirit medicines. It will greatly reduce the effects and even affect the effects. Little medicine fairy was extremely sure that dingshu grass had the biggest problem. Given the little medicine fairy's level, she was extremely knowledgeable in this aspect. It was impossible for her to remember or see wrongly. The effect was fixed, and it was impossible for it to change. Exactly. How could Princess Little Medicine Fairy's judgment be wrong? Yours is the one that's wrong. The dingshu grass is not perfect. That's right, you're still so stubborn. Princess Little Medicine Fairy's rank is much higher than yours. What kind of level is that? How can you be so sure? If I say you're wrong, then it's your fault. Don't you think you've embarrassed yourself enough? One by one, they began to ridicule Yi Tianyun. They could forget about Yi Tianyun's previous situation, but now he dared to be so arrogant and even questioned the Little Medicine Fairy's judgment. This made them very unhappy. They felt that he was really too ignorant. The Little Medicine Fairy's alchemy level was at least at the level of a 6th or 7th grade divine alchemy master. This level was countless times higher than them. One had to know that the strongest level of divine alchemy here was only at the 8th grade, and the Little Medicine Fairy was basically at the level below the divine alchemy master. She dared not say that she was ranked 2nd in the Divine Medicine Temple, but there was no problem for her to kill her way into the top 5. How could she be wrong to have such a level at such a young age? Yi Tianyun's expression was indifferent. He ignored the ridicule around him. This kind of challenge of authority, he had done many times before. Every time, the situation was similar, and he would be belittled in all kinds of ways. Authority was authority, and it could not be challenged. Especially when the other party's status was not low, and was even higher than them. Under such circumstances, even if it was wrong, it would be considered right. Is that so? Princess Little Medicine Fairy, the last perfect elixir you mentioned, is it the green leaf grass? Yi Tianyun said with a smile. Yes, it seems that you still know that the green leaf grass is the perfect combination. The Little Medicine Fairy's eyes narrowed. She thought that Yi Tianyun didn't know, but she didn't expect him to know. Because I know that the green leaf grass is the perfect combination. Try the effect of this elixir first. Yi Tianyun stretched out his hand, and the elixir in his hand fell into the Little Medicine Fairy's hand. The Little Medicine Fairy picked it up and gently sniffed it. Her eyes showed some surprise, and immediately swallowed it without hesitation. After a moment, the Little Medicine Fairy's eyes were filled with a complicated look. She looked at Yi Tianyun with a little more surprise. This effect is indeed the best. The Little Medicine Fairy admitted, but she didn't reject the fact that the effect was not good. This made Yi Tianyun's eyes brighten. It seemed that the Little Medicine Fairy wasn't being stubborn. If she really was stubborn, everyone would really believe her words and not Yi Tianyun's. After all, the Little Medicine Fairy was the authority, and he wasn't. Under such circumstances, it could be completely denied that his elixir was the worst. But she didn't do so, and chose to admit it. This meant that she would be very embarrassed. Just a moment ago, she was very certain that she was right, but now she was slapping her own face. But this spirit made Yi Tianyun feel some admiration. How many people in a high position could do this? Even if they were wrong, they wouldn't choose to admit it. The Little Medicine Fairy's admission made the participants who were previously criticizing Tianyun speechless. They didn't think that the Little Medicine Fairy would admit it, and even more so, they didn't think that the Little Medicine Fairy would make a mistake. This was simply unimaginable. One had to know that the Little Medicine Fairy's grade was so high. How could she be wrong? This was like a Tier 7 God Pill Master failing to refine a Tier 1 elixir. It was impossible to fail, even with one's eyes closed, it was impossible to fail. But this was the truth, the Little Medicine Fairy's judgment was wrong. On the contrary, Tianyun won. Chapter 1748. The Little Medicine Fairy's admission greatly improved Tianyun's impression of the Medicine God Temple. He didn't expect there to be such a clear-headed person. Although he saw that the Little Medicine Fairy's character was good before, he really didn't know what her real situation was until the end. Now it seemed that the Little Medicine Fairy's character was really good. She really didn't put on airs and made mistakes when she should. The Little Medicine Fairy's admission made the laughter of Tianyun stop abruptly. They didn't expect the Little Medicine Fairy to really admit it. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, it seems that you have already eaten it. What is going on? Tianyun said with a smile. Yes, I have already eaten it. It is indeed the most perfect combination. I just didn't expect that the ding shu grass you added was not a fully matured ding shu grass, but an immature ding shu grass. An immature ding shu grass has a different effect. A mature ding shu grass will have an additional catalytic effect, which will instead affect the current state. An immature ding shu grass, on the contrary, does not have this effect and can increase the effect. This is something I didn't expect. I didn't expect an immature ding shu grass to have such an effect. The Little Medicine Fairy shook her head. She really didn't expect that there would be such a different effect. An immature spiritual medicine would generally not choose to use. After all, if the effect was not at its best, it would certainly not be used. It was like an immature fruit. If eaten, it would be bitter and unpleasant, and even poisonous. Therefore, people often eat mature ones, not immature ones. But this spiritual medicine was different, and the effect was different, which she didn't expect. It's normal. Princess Little Medicine Fairy usually uses mature and perfect spiritual medicine to refine pills. It's impossible to use immature spiritual medicine. Therefore, it's normal that you don't know. If you want to know about this, you just have to be a medicine boy for a while and you will know the difference. Of course, the elixir provided by Princess Little Medicine Fairy requires this spiritual medicine. The others really don't match. It's not that I did it deliberately, but it's very coincidental. Princess Little Medicine Fairy admitted it so readily, which makes me look at you in a different light. If it were anyone else, I'm afraid they would be far from being able to do this. Tianyun couldn't help but praise. He didn't look down on the little immortal medicine for not knowing about this. After all, there were still many things that even a powerhouse did not know. Besides, there were some things that there was no need to know. For example, it didn't matter if he didn't know about this. After all, it wasn't a crucial point. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. The others don't want to admit it because they don't want to put down their pride, but I don't have such concerns. The Little Medicine Fairy looked at them with a solemn expression. At the same time, I hope that everyone will humbly ask for guidance. Don't be arrogant and complacent. This is meaningless to your own progress. On the other hand, the Little Medicine Fairy was able to use herself as an example to teach her disciples. She had really put in a lot of effort. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they began to applaud. They had a deeper understanding of the Little Medicine Fairy's words. At the same time, he looked at Tianyun in a new light. However, there was still a portion of people who were unhappy with Tianyun. They felt that he was stealing their limelight. Then, the Little Medicine Fairy looked at Tianyun and said, I apologize for my previous judgment. Your combination was perfect. I'll reevaluate and give you a score of 30 points, 30 points. Yi Tianyun obtained full marks once again. This caused an uproar among the crowd. They didn't expect that Yi Tianyun would obtain full marks again. This meant that he had obtained full marks for all 3 rounds. If this continued, wouldn't he be able to obtain first place? A disciple from the same sect who appeared out of nowhere had obtained first place just like that. They didn't dare to believe this. Normally, he didn't have any reputation, nor did he have any achievements. It was as if he had appeared out of nowhere. Thank you, Princess Little Medicine Fairy, for your fairness. Yi Tianyun smiled and waited to the side for the next round. After this small interlude, many people's gazes once again gathered on Yi Tianyun. They didn't expect that a little medicine boy would know so much. Most importantly, he dared to talk back to the little medicine fairy. If it wasn't for the little medicine fairy's good attitude, he would have definitely been eliminated. In a normal alchemy competition, the judges were the ones in charge. Whatever the judges said was the law and no one could refute them. If one refuted, it would be seen as disrupting the competition and they would be directly eliminated. Soon, the results of the 3rd round were out. Some people successfully advanced, while others were eliminated. Once again, a large group of people were filtered out. Those who were not filtered out actually had very high scores. This was no different from being filtered out. If the score was too low, there was no reward to speak of. The only reward was to stay here for a period of time and absorb more spiritual energy. In the 3rd round, all of you performed well. Especially the individual participants, their performances were even more dazzling. The little medicine fairy smiled and said, I hope that in the next round, all of you will obtain even better results. Next, all of you should rest well for 2 days. 2 days later, the next round of competition will begin. After the announcement, the little medicine fairy left as before. Yi Tianyun directly sat down to meditate, completely ignoring the cultivators around him. It was meaningless for the other disciples to come over. It was a complete waste of effort. Yi Tianyun's performance also spread to the medicine temple at the same time. Many elders nodded with satisfaction when they saw the situation here. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, I didn't expect you to be defeated. When an elder saw the little medicine fairy coming up, he couldn't help but laugh. He didn't mean to ridicule her, but simply said a few words. Indeed, it's not a shame to be defeated by a junior. The little medicine fairy smiled faintly and said, it proves that there are still people who can be molded. The future pillars of the medicine temple will rely on these new disciples. Without the input of new blood, the medicine temple will not be able to stand firm. That's right. Princess Little Medicine Fairy is so young, but she has such awareness. She is worthy of being the next temple master. We are also relieved. The numerous elders nodded in satisfaction. They did not have any objections to the Little Medicine Fairy being the next successor. However, it would take a long time. The medicine god was now strong. If he wanted to become the next temple master, it was estimated that he would have to become a god emperor or live in seclusion. Elders, no one knows what will happen in the future. Maybe the next temple master will not be me. For me, to be able to manage the medicine temple better, that is the real temple master. The little medicine fairy's beautiful eyes were full of brilliance. There were very few people who could have this kind of idea. Chapter 1749. Yi Tianyun has received a lot of attention, but that's all, not too much. After all, no matter how outstanding he was just a low-level divine alchemist. It would take a lot of time for him to grow. For these higher-ups, it was better to pay attention to the more outstanding ones, such as the Divine Lord level or the Heavenly Master level. These were the ones that needed to be trained. The Lord of Heaven level was a reserve army. They just needed to pay attention to them. Even if there were some eye-catching ones, they would at most nod in satisfaction. As for the rest, they just needed to pay attention to them. At most, they would give them extra rewards or recruit them as disciples. Unless they were particularly eye-catching and heaven-defying, they would immediately be recruited as disciples. Obviously, there was no particularly eye-catching type. Lee Tianyun was eye-catching, but not heaven-defying enough. Heaven-defying level, of course, meant that he had some amazing physique or amazing alchemy skills. At present, it was still within the range of expectations. Naturally, no elder would try to snatch it. At most, they would just watch from above. While a bunch of contestants were talking about him, it was time for the fourth round of the competition. No one knew how many stages there were in total, but they wanted to have more stages so that they could catch up. In fact, they were thinking too much. If it was difficult to catch up in front, it would be difficult for them to catch up. Their level was there. Was there any competition that could make them soar? As long as the gap was too big, there was basically no hope to speak of. Especially for those who were only a few points ahead, it would be impossible for them to catch up. With such a big gap, how could they catch up? Unless they all stopped competing in alchemy, then it was possible to surpass them. But in that case, it was undoubtedly a pipe dream. Those who had this kind of idea were basically daydreaming. They were the kind who didn't work hard. Whether it was the medicine god temple or the outside forces, they all had such disciples. They wanted to be opportunistic and wanted to reap without sowing. Kid, you're quite arrogant. Not only did you ignore us, but you also dared to talk back to Princess Little Medicine Fairy. Hey, kid, we're talking to you. Are you mute? A few young geniuses surrounded him. Towards the end, a few participants who were truly unhappy with Lee Tianyun walked over. All of them were pretty good, but to Lee Tianyun, he was not interested. Lee Tianyun slowly opened his eyes and glanced at them indifferently. In his eyes, they were just a bunch of brats. What's the problem? Lee Tianyun looked at them and said. I thought you were mute. You look like you have some ability. Do you have the ability to bet with us? Pang Yuan looked at him with a disdainful expression. That's right, do you dare to make a bet with us? The other slightly plump boy was called Pang Yuan, and people called him Fatty Yuan. The two of them surrounded him. Their rankings were not low, and they were both in the top 10. They had passed the first two tests with full marks. Although they could not get full marks for the third test, they had at least scored 27 or 28 points. Not only were they ranked at the top, but they were also brothers. Their names were pronounced the same, so it was very easy to confuse them. Not interested. If you want to bet with someone, please walk to the side. Thank you. Lee Tianyun threw out these words and continued to close his eyes to rest. If it wasn't for the fact that he had been nagging in his ears for a long time, he really could not be bothered with them. You brat. The two brothers were instantly enraged. They did not expect that they would be ignored. If it wasn't for the fact that they could not fight here, they would have attacked immediately. They were naturally very unhappy that they had spoken rudely to their goddess. Coward. You really are a coward. If you are a man, then compete with us. They could not help but curse, using the most despicable means to provoke Lee Tianyun. A real man cannot be proved by this kind of competition. In my opinion, with your means and bearing, you are not even men. Lee Tianyun looked up at them, then closed his eyes again, too lazy to pay attention to them. You will regret your words. The two of them were so angry that they stamped their feet. When they wanted to say more, they saw the little medicine fairy fly down from the sacred medicine hall and return to her position, ready to compete. Lee Tianyun shook his head. There were really such people everywhere. 2 days have passed. Now, it's the fourth round. Let me give everyone a hint. There are a total of 5 rounds in the alchemy competition, so I hope that everyone will make good use of them, the little medicine fairy said with a smile. There was no problem with the 5 rounds. It could be considered a normal number of rounds, so many things could be seen. Then, the little medicine fairy waved her hand. Dong! That familiar sound once again rang in their ears. In an instant, a group of people cried out in grief. In front of them was a large bell. They did not expect that there would be such a large bell in every competition. The little medicine fairy really liked this bell. Don't be so depressed. This competition is equivalent to a chance for you to make a comeback. This time, the little medicine fairy did not pretend to be mysterious. She stretched out her hand and the bell flew up. Then, a spirit herb appeared in front of them. This spirit herb was very obvious. It was a golden spirit vine. A long vine wrapped around it, emitting a faint golden light. This was another 10,000-year-old spirit herb. Everyone's eyes lit up, but it was a pity that they could not own it and could only watch from afar. This is a golden spirit vine, one of my companions. It has been watching your competition for a long time and is now hungry. What you need to do now is very simple. Feed it until it is full. The elixirs you feed it will give you corresponding points. Once it is full, this round will end. The little medicine fairy smiled and said, "So, you must hurry up and quickly refine elixirs for it before it is full. There is one thing I need to say in advance. Even if you do not feed it a single elixir, you will not be disqualified. Don't worry about this. As for the time limit, it will be based on when it is full. When it is full, it will be the time to stop." Such an unimaginable round caused them to be dumbfounded. They did not expect that this round was to feed the golden spirit vine. As expected, when the little medicine fairy took action, each round was more and more bizarre than the previous. Now, she even played this game. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. This meant that they were going to compete in speed. Whoever was faster would get more points. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He looked at the little medicine fairy, then at the golden spirit vine. It was probably not that simple, right? This little medicine fairy was probably hiding something from him. Chapter 1750. The appearance of such a strange competition made them feel a little shocked, but they were even more pleasantly surprised. If it was as little medicine fairy said, then they could really earn a lot of points, and there was no limit. As long as they could satisfy the golden spirit vine, they could earn points, and there was no limit. If they could quickly refine elixirs so that the golden spirit vine could consume a lot of elixirs, then their points would definitely increase. This was a competition to see who was faster and whose elixirs were of a higher grade. However, they did not know how many points the golden spirit vine would give, and whether it liked them or not. In short, as little medicine fairy said, it was a chance to turn the tables. As long as they could provide a lot of elixirs, they could catch up. Then the fourth round officially begins. After little medicine fairy announced, a group of contestants immediately rushed to the herb garden outside, and without hesitation, they first harvested the elixirs with the metal attribute. The golden spirit vine was of the metal attribute, so it definitely liked the metal attribute elixirs, so they focused on the metal attribute elixirs. This was the same principle as the big-mouthed demonic flower. They needed elixirs that matched their appetite to have a chance of passing. They were not fools, so they must have thought of a similar problem. Yi Tianyun aimed for another attribute, the wood attribute. While others were frantically looking for the metal attribute elixirs, he first looked for the wood attribute elixirs, grabbed them, and started to refine them. Ha, what an idiot, he actually took the wood attribute elixirs. Pang Yuan laughed at the side. When he saw Yi Tianyun taking the wood attribute elixirs, he felt that it was an idiot's behavior. That's right, the golden spirit vine obviously likes the metal attribute, but it took the wood attribute, so ridiculous. Pang Yuan shouted at Yi Tianyun, "Boy, no wonder you don't want to bet with us. With this little ability, I'm afraid you won't even have enough clothes to lose to us." The two brothers laughed, picked up a large number of the metal attribute elixirs, and started to refine. Yi Tianyun was too lazy to pay attention to them, and followed them to refine. His action also attracted the attention of many people. Some of them were puzzled and disdainful, while others did as he thought, and took some wood attribute elixirs back to try to refine. From their point of view, there was no harm in trying. If they really succeeded, they would have seized the initiative. After all, Yi Tianyun had always been able to get high scores. Who knew, maybe he would succeed this time. In the blink of an eye, Yi Tianyun had successfully concocted a pill. Amongst all the contestants, he was definitely number one. He did it on purpose. He increased his speed slightly, but he couldn't find any flaws. Just as he was about to feed the golden spirit vine the pill, Pang Yuan finished refining at the same time, slightly slower than Yi Tianyun. They had just finished concocting the pills. Without saying a word, they rushed over. Their speed was much faster than Yi Tianyun's, and they used all their strength to rush out. They wanted to be the first to give their batch of pills to the golden spirit vine. Lord Golden Spirit Vine, these are the pills we refined. Both of them took out several pills. The pills were golden in color and looked very tempting. A rich aroma wafted out from the inside, and it looked pretty good. Apart from their narrow-mindedness, it seemed that they were quite capable. However, when they handed over the pills, the golden spirit vine swung its long vines and knocked the pills out of their hands. Not to mention eating them, it didn't even bother to pick them up. What's going on? Both of them were shocked. The pills they had refined with great difficulty were thrown away like rubbish. It was hard for them to accept. They really couldn't understand why they had been rejected. At this time, Yi Tianyun stepped forward with the pills. As soon as he handed them over, the golden spirit vine immediately rolled them up and quickly absorbed them. The golden spirit vine didn't have a mouth, so it just used its vines to absorb the pills. However, it finished absorbing them in the blink of an eye. After absorbing them, it was satisfied and tapped the jade plate hanging on Yi Tianyun's body twice. The score on it immediately changed, 5 more points. If the golden spirit vine could give this batch of elixirs a score of 5, it would be considered very good. Such a change made the two brothers widen their eyes. Before, they had laughed at Yi Tianyun and said that he was a fool for taking wood attribute pills. Now it seemed that it wasn't Yi Tianyun who was a fool. They were the real fools. Yi Tianyun glanced at them indifferently and continued to refine pills. After refining a batch, he would hand it over to the higher-ups, instead of refining a large batch at once. Unless he used all his strength to refine pills, he would be too stupid to do so. By the time he finished refining a large batch, the golden spirit vine would probably be full. After all, there were so many participants, and there were still a few hundred left. Even if only a part of them could meet the golden spirit vine's requirements, the number would not be small. Therefore, after refining a batch, he immediately continued to refine the next batch. It looked very stable and not too abrupt. Now, this situation not only made the Pang brothers dumbfounded, but also the participants who refined the metal attribute pills. Some of them were shocked, causing their pill refinement to fail. They were also refining metal attribute pills. Now that they failed, their minds were in a mess. Naturally, they failed to explode the pills. Some didn't give up and continued to take the metal attribute pills to hand over. In the end, like the Pang brothers, they were all whipped and the pills flew out. Some who refined would attribute pills together with Yi Tianyun were all wild with joy. They didn't expect that their gamble was right. This kid is quite capable. He immediately saw what kind of pill was needed. When Little Medicine Fairy saw Yi Tianyun's action, she was really a little surprised. He succeeded in one try. She didn't know whether he gambled correctly or acted recklessly. She showed the golden spirit vine, but it was also a misleading phenomenon. After all, the first round was like this. It must meet the other party's requirements in order to succeed. Now, it was a mess. The golden spirit vine would only absorb the restraining attribute. According to their previous thoughts, they would follow along, but they didn't know that they would only hit a wall. Yi Tianyun continued to refine the same batch of pills. Very soon, he handed over the second batch. Originally, he had picked a lot of spiritual herbs, so he could refine immediately after returning. As for the Pang brothers, they had already lost their face. They still had to pick the wood attribute spiritual herbs. Originally, they had been constantly mocking Yi Tianyun. Now, they had become fools. They went to pick the attribute spiritual herbs that they previously mocked. Not only did their faces get slapped swollen, they were completely pulled down and beaten up. The two of them could only silently refine pills. How would they dare to say anything? Fortunately, they didn't bet with Yi Tianyun. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how they died. Chapter 1751. After knowing that metal attribute elixirs were useless, they started to refine wood attribute elixirs. It could be said that everyone was refining wood attribute elixirs. For a moment, green lights soared into the sky. Under their crazy refining, they all succeeded in getting a high score. The faster they were, the more points they would be able to accumulate. Yi Tianyun's speed was the fastest and the most stable. Now, relying on elixirs of high grade, he quickly accumulated more than 40 points. The others were around 10 to 20 points, but he was already leading by more than 10 points. It hadn't been long since the competition started. If he continued like this, he would definitely lead by more points. However, this was nothing to be happy about. He was originally facing a group of relatively low-level Lord of Heaven, while he, a dignified celestial god, was playing with them here. If it weren't for the shortcut to enter the medicine god temple, he really didn't want to do this. It was simply a waste of time. As time went by, the golden spirit vine suddenly flickered slightly. This change was very subtle, and few people noticed it. Those who noticed it thought it was meaningless, so they continued to refine elixirs. Yi Tianyun immediately noticed this change, and instantly stopped the alchemy furnace in his hand. The batch of elixirs he had refined before had failed and turned into a pile of dregs. This change was immediately noticed by many participants, but they couldn't help but chuckle in their hearts, thinking that Yi Tianyun had failed. Yi Tianyun's failure would naturally buy them some time. This kid finally failed. He was so arrogant, but in the end, he still failed. What very stable. It's completely bullshit. I thought he would never fail, but it seems that he will fail all the same. Look at his arrogant expression, and he is still seeking defeat. Now that he is seeking defeat, it's simply a complete defeat. They laughed again, thinking that Yi Tianyun was really ridiculous, especially his cold appearance, which made them very unhappy. Now that he had failed, they naturally gloated. When Yi Tianyun turned around and left, Little Medicine Fairy showed a surprised expression. Did he really see through it immediately? This is too heaven-defying. Yi Tianyun came to the edge of the herb garden and started to pick the spiritual herbs quickly. The spiritual herbs he picked were all of the metal attribute. That's right, it was a spirit herb of the metal attribute, not any other attribute. In the past, many participants had suffered greatly because of this metal-type spirit herb. Now, Yi Tianyun had a metal-type spirit herb, causing the audience to be dumbfounded. They all wondered if Yi Tianyun's head had been kicked. He had been determined to be wrong, but he still chose to do it. It was a mistake to begin with, and he even made the wrong choice, especially after he failed. This puzzled them. Why did he make such a choice? After Yi Tianyun calmly made his selection, he returned to the field and started to quickly refine the elixirs. The grade of the elixirs he chose was neither too high nor too low, it was considered to be quite suitable. However, his return left the other participants dumbfounded. They didn't know if they should refine together with him. However, he had clearly been judged to not be able to eat it. If he continued to refine it now, wouldn't he be retarded? Thus, the group of people didn't choose to follow him. Instead, they continued to refine elixirs. What is this kid doing? Not only did he fail, he even went to take the metal-type spirit herb that was judged to not be able to eat. Could it be that the taste of this gold spirit vine has changed? But I can't see it. Some people thought that Yi Tianyun was an idiot, but some people smelled something different. At this time, someone had already picked up the wood-type elixir and went forward. He handed it over like before, thinking that it would be swallowed like before. Who knew that as soon as he handed it over, he would be whipped, sending the pile of wood-type elixirs flying away. This kind of action instantly caused everyone to be dumbfounded. It was really a change of taste. Some people didn't believe it and still chose to continue refining elixirs. After succeeding, they picked up the elixir and went forward again. The result was the same. They were whipped again, and the elixirs flew everywhere, becoming useless elixirs. They could definitely be eaten, but elixirs that couldn't be offered were basically useless elixirs. It really has changed. They were all stunned. There was no movement at all, and the taste had changed just like that. At this time, Yi Tianyun had already successfully refined a batch of metal-type elixirs. When he handed them over, the gold spirit vine didn't hesitate to curl them up and quickly swallow them. Then, he gave Yi Tianyun 10 points. When this result appeared, the whole audience was shocked. It caused a series of exclamations. No one thought that it would really succeed. In fact, some of the people with higher cultivation had already noticed something. With the subtle changes in the gold spirit vine, they immediately sensed that something was wrong. It was just that they weren't as sensitive as Yi Tianyun. Now that it had really succeeded, the gold spirit vine could only take the metal-type elixirs. Immediately, everyone gave up on refining wood-type elixirs and went to find metal-type spirit herbs to refine. Everything was based on Yi Tianyun, and they completely followed Yi Tianyun's style. Those who had failed before were all full of regret. They didn't expect that it would really change. Yi Tianyun could also see that they didn't believe it. Now, they had wasted a lot of time. When Little Medicine Fairy saw this scene, she shook her head, her eyes filled with disappointment. But when she looked at Yi Tianyun, her gaze was filled with a bit of curiosity. Originally, there were a few people who had some competition with Yi Tianyun, but now, it seemed that none of them could compare to Yi Tianyun. They were completely left behind, and even became an existence that followed the trend. It seems that there is no longer any suspense about the first place of this alchemy competition. When Little Medicine Fairy saw this scene, she knew that the first place would belong to Yi Tianyun. To be able to completely change the direction of the competition, he was already destined to be the winner. After all, if he was one step ahead, he would always be ahead. The fourth round quickly ended with the gold spirit vine eating its fill. Many of the participants had obtained a lot of points. Among them, Yi Tianyun had obtained more than 170 points, 70 points ahead of the second place, looking down on everyone. There was almost no suspense. In the fifth round, unless Yi Tianyun withdrew or did not do anything, he would definitely win. He had obtained high points in 4 rounds in a row. Even if his result in the fifth round was very bad, he would still be able to obtain first place. After the fourth round ended, everyone shook their heads, feeling very dissatisfied with their performance. I am very disappointed in all of you for this round. Little Medicine Fairy repeated her words once again, causing them to be alarmed. What was going on now? Immediately, Little Medicine Fairy gave them an answer. She said coldly, "Did you really think that after the gold spirit vine changed, it would only eat metal-type elixirs?" Chapter 1752. From Little Medicine Fairy's expression, they could tell that the golden spirit vine not only ate the metal element, but also other elixirs. However, they were too lazy to think too much about it, so they just followed Little Medicine Fairy's lead. After all, if they tried randomly and failed, it would be a waste of time. In a race against time, anyone who did that would undoubtedly be courting death. So now there is a problem, that is to keep chasing Yi Tianyun, but Yi Tianyun is far ahead of them, and no one can keep up with him. In addition to the metal element elixirs, the golden spirit vine can also absorb elixirs of other attributes. That is to say, it can absorb all the other attributes except the wood element. Little Medicine Fairy was exasperated at their failure to live up to her expectations. You are blindly following the trend. If you were to refine pills of other attributes or slightly stronger ones, you might be able to get a higher score. But you are refining the exact same pills or pills of similar quality. I really don't know what to say just based on your actions. I can only say that you're too afraid to try. You only know how to follow others. For example, if you refine a combination of the metal and water elements, and a higher grade, you can get a higher score. Refining one is equivalent to several others. That's a very high score. But you didn't even think about it and just kept refining. Is this the level of the Medicine Temple's disciples? I remember when I was cultivating, I already told you that divine alchemists not only need to be steady, but they also need to have a sense of enlightenment, a way of thinking. Only in this way can you break through. If you keep following others' path without thinking, you will never reach a higher level. Little Medicine Fairy didn't stop scolding them. They all lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at Little Medicine Fairy. Tianyun smiled. He naturally knew the corresponding problem. If he combined it with other attributes, he could get a higher score. But he was too lazy to do that. With his speed, he would definitely win. There was no need to show off so much. Who would have thought that a group of contestants would follow him to refine elixirs? How ridiculous. Gradually, he felt that participating in this competition was becoming more and more interesting. What was interesting was that he knew the situation of the Medicine God Temple. They were too stubborn and not easy to change. This was because they had too little experience. If they often went out to experience, they definitely wouldn't have such stubborn thoughts. Most of the time, he needed to be flexible. Especially during the competition, what was needed was not stability, but a breakthrough was needed if one wanted a high ranking. However, they didn't do so. They just wanted stability and didn't know how to be flexible. All the contestants felt wronged. How could they tell? If they could, they would have done it long ago. Why would they need to do it together with Tianyun? The Little Medicine Fairy seemed to know what they were thinking and immediately scolded. Do you feel that there is no hint at all? Feeling wronged? There are no hints at all. How am I supposed to refine it? You, explain. Little Medicine Fairy pointed at Tianyun, motioning for Tianyun to come forward and explain. Tianyun immediately became the focus. All the contestants looked up at him, wanting to hear his explanation. Many people were also looking forward to Tianyun, saying that it was a wild guess. That would be hilarious. In this way, even if he won first place, he wouldn't win the favor of the Little Medicine Fairy. The Little Medicine Fairy had already said that what was needed was strength, not blind guessing, and even more so not luck. Tianyun stood up and pointed at the golden spirit vine. This can be judged by the luster of its body and the smell it emits. Previously, it was very eager to absorb the effect of the wood element, so I could smell a faint aura of the wood element. At the same time, the golden luster on its body slightly decreased. This means that the desire for the metal element is not high, so it can be judged that metal element elixirs are not within its scope of consideration. Later, it changed. The smell changed and became more complicated. What it desired the most were the metal and water elements. If the two were combined, the effect would definitely be better. But I am a lazy person, so I felt that just relying on the metal element was enough. Especially when combined with my pill refining technique, it would be easier to succeed if I just refined one element. But combining the two elements would be slightly more difficult. The time needed and the failure rate would increase, so it is not worth it. Tianyun analyzed it one by one, causing the contestants to be dumbfounded. They didn't expect that Tianyun would really explain it one by one. Moreover, it was so clear and logical. This made them incomparably shocked. They didn't expect that there would be such a judgment. They felt that there was a slight change, but they didn't expect the change to be so rich. Not only from the smell, but also from the luster on the surface. But this change was too subtle, so it was hard to detect. Perhaps they needed to go closer and observe more to be able to see it. This couldn't be blamed on them. Their cultivation was lower, so how could they compare to Tianyun's observational skills? But they didn't take the initiative to observe. This was a confirmed fact. After Little Medicine Fairy heard it, she nodded her head in satisfaction. Did you hear that? This is the ability a divine pill refiner should have. You need to have sufficient judgment. You guys don't even analyze it and just blindly follow the trend. You really don't have any opinions. Now, I will announce that only one person will advance to the next round in this pill refining competition, and that is him. Little Medicine Fairy was so angry that she exploded. She thought that things would get better in the later rounds, but she didn't expect that everyone would become so stupid. She was so angry that she wanted to beat someone up. Now that the results were announced, everyone was even more shocked. There were so many contestants, but only one person succeeded in advancing. Wasn't this a joke? But no one thought that Little Medicine Fairy was joking. If it was really decided, then it would be the first time in the history of the pill refining competition that only one person advanced. In the past, no matter how strict it would not be this strict. After all, it was so strict that only one person could advance. The performance of the previous contestants was completely overruled. It was really frightening. Princess Little Medicine Fairy, this must not be done. The attendants at the side were so frightened that they came over to dissuade her. If it was really like this, then wouldn't it explode? No matter what, some people had to advance, otherwise where would there be new blood? All the contestants were also dumbfounded. What happened to the fifth round? What happened to the scores? Now, not only were the scores useless, even the fifth round was gone. They all failed, and no one could advance. Chapter 1753. Generally, in alchemy competitions or other competitions, disciples were selected internally to be promoted. All of this was to add new blood to his faction to increase its strength. Therefore, every selection was more important. Although their cultivation was on the low side, in the future, the mainstay would be maintained by this batch of new disciples. Now that Little Medicine Fairy said that she only wanted Yi Tianyun, it was undoubtedly an exaggeration. If she really did that, there would be a very serious gap. This gap would last for as long as 100 years, and there would be no new blood joining. For this reason, the deacon and the others immediately panicked. This was simply fatal. If there was a gap, it would be a very serious matter. Especially since the medicine temple was self-sufficient, unlike other forces, there would be a continuous stream of geniuses joining to fill the gap. If there was a gap here, they would have to wait for the next alchemy competition. There was only one alchemy competition every 100 years. It was not a long time, but for cultivation, it could be said to be a race against time. If they could not be promoted, they would not be able to get better resources. Some of the very good geniuses would not be able to enjoy the corresponding resources if they did not advance. This meant that they would waste 100 years in vain, which was a very serious matter. Little Medicine Fairy also realized the seriousness of the situation. She looked up at the many disciples below the stage, each of them looking at her with innocent eyes, feeling extremely wronged. Even if they did not have too many ideas, their ability was considered qualified. It was really too grievous to be rejected just like that. Well, I will give you one last chance, that is, a chance to pass the fifth round. I will draw a standard, and if you are below this standard, don't even think about advancing. No matter who tells me, it will be useless. Little Medicine Fairy thought for a moment, and finally gave them a chance. It was indeed serious that there was a gap, but if they did not meet the standard, she really did not want them to advance. Thank you, Princess Little Medicine Fairy, for giving us another chance, they nodded repeatedly, feeling extremely ashamed. After being reminded by Little Medicine Fairy, they only realized how wrong they were. Thinking about it carefully, it was indeed true. If they kept following in the footsteps of others, how could they improve? Which of the truly outstanding god alchemists was not maverick? They had to follow their own characteristics in order to display a stronger effect. Alright, then we'll rest for 2 weeks. When the time comes, we'll proceed to the fifth round. However, this disciple doesn't need to participate in the fifth round. Come with me. Little Medicine Fairy signaled Yi Tianyun to come over. There was no need for him to participate in the fifth round. They didn't even need to participate in the fifth round to know who the champion was. Unless Yi Tianyun gave up, he would definitely be the winner. With such a huge lead in points, coupled with their outstanding performance in the previous 4 rounds, it was impossible for them to fail in the 5th round. Therefore, if Yi Tianyun was allowed to advance to the next round and continue to participate in the 5th round, he might disturb the other participants. The other contestants didn't have any objections to this result. Yi Tianyun's performance had indeed exceeded their expectations. He was much stronger than all of them, so they had no choice but to acknowledge him. If they were to participate together, they would definitely suffer a blow and would not be able to help themselves from following the trend. Yi Tianyun seemed to have some kind of magical power that made them want to follow him. This was a very helpless problem, but they could only choose to agree. Yi Tianyun shrugged and followed up. It didn't matter whether he participated or not. If he could enter the medicine god temple without participating, he would be even more happy. Originally, he came here to sneak in, so he couldn't wait to participate. After Yi Tianyun walked over, Little Medicine Fairy pointed to the top of the medicine god temple and said, "Here, you have to go up step by step. It's not only a test for you, but also a reward for you. There's no time limit, but I hope you can climb up as soon as possible." After that, Little Medicine Fairy flew back to the medicine god temple, leaving Yi Tianyun to climb the towering stairs. Yi Tianyun lifted his foot and immediately felt a resistance coming from above. Sure enough, it was similar to the difficulty of this test. However, the further he went, the more he could feel a constant surge of power, constantly strengthening his body. However, this effect was negligible and could basically be ignored. This difficulty was originally provided for the Lord of Heaven level. At most, a Divine Emperor would have some effect here. A slightly stronger Divine Emperor would probably not have any effect. This medicine god temple really pays attention to training new people. Yi Tianyun walked up very quickly. This resistance was not difficult for him at all. However, he still had to pretend to climb with difficulty, using a speed that was neither too fast nor too slow. He had made some calculations and felt that only at this speed would he be able to walk up perfectly, and not charge straight up. That would scare them. At the same time, when Little Medicine Fairy returned to the medicine god temple, a group of elders tried to dissuade her. "Princess Little Medicine Fairy, don't be so easily angered. Young people are like this, eager for quick results. Don't be so strict. If you are too strict, they will be anxious. When they gradually cultivate, it will be much better." Although these elders were not very concerned, they did not want to have a serious gap, which would affect the operation of the medicine god temple. That's true, but this is the most basic ability. Sometimes, being strict is a good thing for them. The next time they participate, they will be able to show more outstanding performance. Little Medicine Fairy shook her head and said, "Everything depends on the 5th test. I hope the elders won't try to persuade me." The few elders looked at each other and helplessly nodded their heads. Since the Little Medicine Fairy had already said so, they could only agree. Since they had given the opportunity, it was their own business if they did not fight for it. After all, Little Medicine Fairy's status was at the level of an elder and the next temple master. Especially this time, as the chief referee, how to operate was up to her, and the others really could not intervene. Unless the medicine god intervened, then it would be different. Speaking of which, the new disciple seems to have a good foundation. He can see the need of the golden spirit vine at once. How long do you think it will take for him to come up? Good alchemy doesn't mean good physique. The weakest thing about us divine alchemists is physique. We need to strengthen it. I estimate it will take at least a month for him to come up to the medicine god temple. A month? That's a good estimate. When I first came up, it took me more than 3 weeks. A month is not bad. Chapter 1754. Little Medicine Fairy didn't say anything about changing the topic. She also didn't want to be entangled in this matter. She didn't want anyone else to interfere with her decision. While they were discussing, a figure appeared at the door, immediately attracting their attention. What came into view was actually Yi Tianyun's figure. For a moment, they were stunned. They didn't think that Tianyun would come over so quickly. Naturally, he wouldn't investigate the situation below for no reason. Who knew that after chatting for a while, Tianyun had already come up? Although they had chatted for a while, it had actually been a week. In just a week, he had come up from below, which shocked the group of people. What's wrong? When Tianyun came up and saw them looking at him in shock, he knew that he had walked too quickly. But according to his estimation, a week wasn't fast, but it definitely wasn't slow. Based on the general difficulty, he felt that a week's time was the most suitable choice. But looking at their expressions, it seemed that he had come too early. Coming up in a week, what kind of speed is this? I'm afraid that Princess Little Medicine Fairy would need more than a week, or even 2 weeks. They were all stunned. They originally thought that Tianyun would need at least a month, but this was still considered early. This was considered to be early. Some would need at least a few months or even half a year to climb up from below. Of course, they had benefited greatly. Climbing the stairs had become a joyful matter. But Tianyun's actions had undoubtedly broken the conventional record and reached a new record. Apart from some ancestor-level existences or medicine gods, no one else would be able to reach this record. This is too unbelievable. How did he do it? Little Medicine Fairy was also shocked. She was in the midst of preparation, but such an unexpected surprise had happened. When Tianyun saw their expressions, he knew that he had estimated wrongly. The higher the stairs, the greater the difficulty. He had deliberately slowed down, but there was one thing he had forgotten to estimate, and that was consumption. The further he went, the more serious the consumption would be. At that time, his speed would naturally slow down. Some of them were even concocting pills to replenish their energy, while others were meditating and cultivating. Tianyun didn't even need to think about resting to refine pills, let alone meditating to cultivate. He simply climbed up without thinking. Actually, most of the time, he would stay on the stairs to rest and meditate. How could he miss such a rare opportunity? Tianyun was an exception. His cultivation was high enough to begin with, but even if he sat on the steps for half a decade, he wouldn't be able to gain any enlightenment. That was why he had come up so quickly instead of staying at the top. Of course, the most important thing was that he didn't need to rest at all. He just rushed forward, and the result was that he scared them. Well, I just kept climbing up and didn't stop. Here I am. It took a long time, right? Tianyun scratched his head. They had been climbing the stairs for a week. Wasn't that long? As a heavenly deity, climbing for so long was truly a waste of time. If this was a long time, then the others would be snails. They smiled bitterly. Seeing such a scene, they were still shocked. Looks like your physique is not bad. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so fast. How do you usually cultivate? How can your physique be so strong? The Little Medicine Fairy sized him up and down, her gaze constantly sweeping across his body, trying to find something from him. But no matter how she looked, she couldn't find anything. Under the protection of the void bloodline, she couldn't find anything. Unless she touched him at close range, there wouldn't be any effect. I usually cultivate normally and then use pills to strengthen my body. It's just that I pay more attention to physique cultivation. Usually, when I have nothing to do, I carry some extremely heavy profound stones to play with. Over time, I probably refine some. Tianyun randomly found an excuse to explain. Profound stones were actually the most common thing, and they could be found nearby. Not only were profound stones worthless, but they were also very heavy. They were heavier than many other materials. It would be a good choice to use them to train one's physique. But normally, no one would use them like this. The efficiency was too low. Moreover, they were divine pill masters and wouldn't do such a stupid thing. It was too much of a waste of time. They might as well focus on refining pills instead of training their physiques. Physique was something that could be improved in the later stages of cultivation. Then, they could go hunt some dragons or some special race and use their essence blood to refine pills. When the time came, the physique would be improved by several times. It would save time and effort. Why would they do something that was strenuous and unrewarding? So that's how it is. They had strange expressions. Usually, they spent so much effort to temper their bodies, but still had such a level of pill refinement. It was really shocking. But you came up so quickly. Did you properly comprehend the things on the stairs? Little Medicine Fairy frowned. There was no meaning in trying to speed up here. What was needed was to walk up completely. In other words, to thoroughly comprehend it once, that would be the most perfect. Back then, the Little Medicine Fairy had completely comprehended it once, and only needed a week's time. She was a true genius. If she just rushed up and relied on brute force, it would really be meaningless. Well, I just comprehended a little bit. Yi Tianyun answered honestly. With so many heavenly gods staring at him, it was easy to tell if he was lying or not. This wasn't something that the Void bloodline could hide. Then I'm too disappointed. There's no point in chasing after speed. If you come up so quickly, you won't get any extra rewards. Little Medicine Fairy was a little displeased. This was undoubtedly a waste. Then should I turn around and walk back? Yi Tianyun pointed behind him. No need. There's no point in doing that. Little Medicine Fairy's expression was as cold as ice. She was clearly infuriated by Yi Tianyun. She had thought that Yi Tianyun would be a little more outstanding. She hadn't expected him to be so insensible. Even if he turned around now, he couldn't go back down. Usually, the first time was the best. Moreover, he wouldn't turn around again. If he turned around and left, he could only say that he would leave immediately. He wouldn't continue to stay here and comprehend. Yi Tianyun shrugged. He didn't care about Little Medicine Fairy's situation. Now that he came in, he immediately observed the situation around to see if he could see anything. There was nothing special about the inside of the Medicine God Temple. It was relatively ordinary. However, the secret was definitely on the inside and not on the outside. Chapter 1755. The Little Medicine Fairy was a little disappointed with Yi Tianyun, but on the whole, she still liked him a little more. Anyway, Yi Tianyun's performance in the competition was very satisfactory, but there was a big problem with the climbing, which made her feel very unhappy. She was devoted to the Medicine Temple, and it was naturally a good thing to have a genius. Who knew that he was so careless in this regard, which really made her feel a little disappointed. Although she was disappointed, the overall score was still very high. After all, there was a comparison, so she knew that Yi Tianyun was better. Under the leadership of the Little Medicine Fairy, Yi Tianyun walked in together. The deeper they went, the stronger the energy was. It was filled with spiritual chi from all kinds of elixirs, which filled the entire Medicine God Temple. Every nook and cranny was filled with this spiritual energy, giving off a feeling of materialization. It could be said that water could be squeezed out of the void. Such a unique environment could only be enjoyed by these strong people. Every breath he took was a kind of enjoyment. Just breathing here could raise one's cultivation. Of course, their cultivation was so strong that the effect was still very limited. When they gathered together, it was certainly not limited to breathing for themselves, but used to operate the Great Formation. The reason why the Medicine Temple was so strong was largely because of the operation of the Great Formation. The 5 mountains were 5 great formations. When combined, it was an incomparably large formation, which could fight against strong enemies and let the spirit medicines here thrive. If it was very simple to extract the spiritual chi and then use it, it would be too much. The Medicine Temple would not do such a low-level thing, but extract the spiritual chi and then feed it back to the whole area. This kind of structure made Yi Tianyun feel very perfect, but it was still very difficult to lay it out. First of all, he couldn't meet the basic conditions. So many spirit medicines was the most basic condition. There were many spirit medicines in the 3 realms, but such a large number of spirit medicines was still quite rare. First of all, the first compensation for you is here. The little medicine fairy pointed to the small area in front, which was actually a cultivation area. There were many secret cultivation rooms here, where you could practice well. Compensation. Tianyun's eyes lit up when he saw the secret cultivation room. It wasn't that the secret cultivation room gave him the desire to cultivate, but that he could hide inside and then sneak out to investigate the situation. If he continued to follow the little medicine fairy, he would definitely not be able to move around freely. That's right, it's compensation. Originally, the compensation for you was very simple. It was either some medicinal pills. If your results were okay and you had some potential, then even if you were unable to advance, you would still be given a chance to climb the stairs and deepen your comprehension. The little medicine fairy explained. The compensation she was talking about was the compensation for the first stage. However, now that Tianyun had successfully advanced to the next level, the compensation he had previously thought of was naturally meaningless. So, that's how it is. In that case, I will accept the compensation. Being able to cultivate here is quite good, said Tianyun with a smile. And, you can temporarily cultivate in seclusion here. You can stay here for as long as you want. As for the time, just follow my instructions. So, you can cultivate without worry. During this period of time, just stay here and don't leave. If you move around randomly, you will be stopped by the guards. The little medicine fairy pointed at the guard at the entrance, indicating that he should not move around randomly. I will not move around randomly. Tianyun added in his heart, I will fly around randomly. After the competition is over, I will come and find you again. After saying that, the little medicine fairy left. It was obvious that she was going to prepare for the competition. The competition hadn't started yet, so he still had to prepare in advance. Even after the competition ended, he still had to wait for the group of disciples to climb up. Thus, it would still take a long time. Tianyun randomly chose a secret cultivation room and entered. When he entered, there was always a guard staring at him. It seemed that it would be quite difficult for him to openly sneak out. A secret cultivation room. The concentration of spiritual energy here is not bad. Tianyun was very satisfied with this, but it was a pity that he had no interest in it. After entering, he did not hesitate and immediately took out the teleportation divine stone and immediately started the teleportation. With a swoosh, he disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in the passageway. The moment he appeared, he immediately hid in the void, as if he had never appeared before. The teleportation divine stone was that powerful. It was not easy to enter from the outside, nor could it be used to teleport out. After all, the seal here was very strong. The teleportation divine stone's effect was almost useless. Fortunately, this was an internal teleportation, so there was no such problem. If he opened the door, he would immediately be seen by the guards. Thus, he definitely had to use the teleportation divine stone. After coming out, Tianyun quietly moved deeper into the passageway. After so long, he could finally sneak in. It really wasn't easy. As he gradually moved deeper, he quickly saw the guards at the entrance. At the side of each passageway, there was a guard. The security here was very tight. Tianyun was not afraid at all. He directly moved forward. The void bloodline at the maximum level was not leveled up for nothing. He easily passed through the guards, as if nothing had happened. Not to mention sensing anything, the guards could not even sense a trace of energy fluctuation. The void bloodline is indeed a divine stealth skill. Tianyun shook his head. It was a pity that this thing was already at the maximum level. Otherwise, he would have fiercely increased it to another level. After passing through layers of passageways, he soon met the little medicine fairy. The little medicine fairy was not in a hurry to go out. Instead, she walked into the medicine god temple. When he saw the little medicine fairy, he did not hesitate to follow her. With the little medicine fairy leading the way, it would definitely be easier. After all, if he wanted to go deeper, some areas would definitely be sealed. If he did not open them, he would not be able to enter. When he approached, the little medicine fairy suddenly turned her head and looked over. Yi Tianyun's body froze, and he just stood there, not daring to move. The little medicine fairy looked in the direction where Yi Tianyun was for a while, revealing a puzzled expression. Strange, why do I feel that someone is behind me, but I don't sense anything? She shook her head doubtfully, thinking that she was hallucinating. Then, she continued to walk inside. Yi Tianyun was startled. He did not expect the little medicine fairy to be able to sense something. She was indeed a great genius. The little medicine fairy's cultivation was at the mid-level heavenly god level. It was not very high, but she almost sensed him. Her perceptive ability was really amazing. Fortunately, she still could not find anything after probing, so she chose to give up. Chapter 1756. Yi Tianyun followed Little Medicine Fairy all the way forward. Little Medicine Fairy was unimpeded all the way, the guards immediately let her pass when they saw her. But Little Medicine Fairy occasionally turned her head to look back and even walked towards them. After carefully checking several times, Little Medicine Fairy finally gave up. She always felt that someone was following behind, but she couldn't detect it, which made her very confused. But confusion is confusion, she can only think that she is too sensitive, which led to this situation. Yi Tianyun is also quite helpless. If he can upgrade his void bloodline, Little Medicine Fairy will definitely not be able to detect him. Do I really need to upgrade the invisibility divine skill? Yi Tianyun thought about it and chose to give up. If he wants to make a heavenly god not be able to see him, he needs to upgrade it several times in a row. At that time, the crazy point required is quite amazing. This is also the reason why he is not willing to upgrade it. If upgrading only needs a little crazy point, then he will definitely not hesitate to upgrade it to the maximum level. After all, compared to void bloodline, invisibility is the real divine skill. If the two are combined, it is even more invincible. When the invisibility is about to end, he can immediately hide in the void. It is a perfect match. But for the time being, he is confident that as long as he doesn't encounter a medicine god, he can easily avoid detection. In fact, this is indeed the case. Many middle heavenly gods passed by and didn't find his existence. How can they be as sensitive as Little Medicine Fairy who can detect anything? Along the way, the Little Medicine Fairy strangely asked the passing elders if they had sensed anyone nearby. Those elders naturally shook their heads and said that they didn't sense anything. It is all Little Medicine Fairy's illusion. In their opinion, who can successfully sneak in here? Is this not a joke? The halos that were emitted from the outside had already stopped the cultivators who could sneak in. Yi Tianyun is an exception, he came in openly. The halos had no effect inside. After all, they would only be released to the outside and not to the inside. If it is released inside, then it really makes him desperate, he can't sneak in. That was a truly heaven-defying thing. Even a top-notch void bloodline could be detected. Even the invisibility godly skill could be detected, right? This was probably something left behind by the previous alchemy god. In other words, it was something created by the god emperor. It would definitely be able to see through everything. Fortunately, the Little Medicine Fairy was puzzled, but she still walked inside. After a few turns, the Little Medicine Fairy quickly arrived at the central region. She did not go to a hidden place, but to the central hall of the Medicine God Temple. There was a huge statue there. The towering statue was full of majesty, and a wave of divine power descended from above, enveloping the area. When Yi Tianyun came in, he was almost squeezed out of the void. Luckily, he held on and didn't get squeezed out. This terrifying divine power was undoubtedly similar to the power of a god emperor. It could suppress everything. This was a power that could truly suppress everything. Fortunately, this power was extremely faint and not very strong. The Little Medicine Fairy knelt on the ground and put her palms together, as though she was praying for something. There was no one else near the statue. Normally, no one would come here. Therefore, there was only the Little Medicine Fairy here. It seemed empty. However, When such divine power descended, one would only feel endless pressure, not the slightest emptiness. This is the power of a god emperor. Yi Tianyun looked up at the statue. The vast divine power descended, making it difficult for him to look directly at the statue. If not for the divine power's decline, he would definitely not be able to look directly at the statue. Only now did he realize how terrifying a god emperor was. Even if it was infinitely close to a god emperor, it was still nonsense. Infinitely close to a god emperor, but still not a god emperor. This was the true power of a god emperor. Just a little bit of power was enough to make him feel a lot more pressure. What about a real god emperor? He could probably really control the life and death of this place. He could control this world. Whoever disobeyed him, he could suppress them. No one could stop him. This is the true power of a god emperor. Yi Tianyun avoided the statue's eyes. Just as he was about to look at the little medicine fairy, he sensed a strange aura circulating within the statue. What is this? Yi Tianyun's pupils constricted. He quickly used the appraisal eye and started peeling away the outer layers to look at the innermost core. After looking very deep, he saw a small teleportation array in the central region, circulating an extremely minute amount of energy. If he did not look carefully, he would not be able to detect it. Looking at the little medicine fairy's appearance, he knew that she could not detect it, or rather, she did not dare to desecrate the statue. Therefore, it was impossible for her to inspect the statue from the inside out. This was like a junior facing an elder. They could not inspect the cultivation level of the elder. This was equivalent to being disrespectful. The statue was their ancestor. Inspecting it was a form of blasphemy. Why is there a sound transmission array? Yi Tianyun felt a little suspicious. This sound transmission array was actually very simple. As the name suggested, it could transmit sound to the ears of the people on the other side. However, this sound transmission array was very well hidden. It could be said that it was very hard to detect. If one did not inspect it deeply, they would not be able to detect it. Other than that, there was nothing special about it. After all, there was nothing on it to begin with. But just this point was enough to make Yi Tianyun suspicious. After all, creating a sound transmission array in the statue was an extremely rude thing to do. He did not know what it was used for. But logically speaking, creating a sound transmission array in the statue was a form of blasphemy. He knew how to use it. If it was used, it would be equivalent to letting the statue speak or send a message. This was equivalent to deceiving everyone into thinking that the statue could speak. Only the ancestor could speak. This was not only deceiving everyone, but it was also deceiving the little medicine fairy and the rest. This is really strange. I wonder who is controlling this sound transmission array. Yi Tianyun frowned. Just as he was thinking about something, a figure suddenly walked over. At the same time, the little medicine fairy slowly opened her eyes. When she saw the figure walking over, she smiled and said, "Third Elder, you're here. Little medicine fairy, are you here to pray today?" The kind-looking elder walked over with a smile. "You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.